Yes.
The Leaf Spring Army sends its regards.
Hello, everyone. I am the Enforcer, and I'm accompanied by Enforcer Matt.
And good evening, folks. It's Enforcer Matt, and welcome back to day 1232 of the news. And today we have massive news coming out of Ukraine and Russia. We've seen massive drone attacks being exchanged between those two countries. We've also seen the Houthi forces explode yet another cargo ship in the Red Sea, and they've also taken hostages. And also, Russian sanctions are imminent by U.S. officials by the end of the month. And it's good to see you all once again.
And of course, we're going to be covering the past 24 hours of news from around the world, as we've been able to hear developments from quite literally every single corner of the globe today, as it does appear that significant developments are still occurring on most major fronts of conflict at this point. We have been able to hear within the southern Red Sea that Iranian forces, the Yemeni Houthis, have practically closed the Red Sea to any merchant traffic, as we were able to confirm today the destruction of the Eternity Sea vessel in Houthi footage published just hours ago, and we also were able to confirm that another vessel has been attacked today, and it does appear that according to initial reports, the crew may have been taken hostage as a result of the attack that occurred on the vessel which happened today. We have also been able to hear significant information as well that the state of Israel is continuing its armed action against the Iranian proxy forces of the Yemeni Houthis, or the Hezbollah forces in southern Lebanon, and Hamas within the Gaza Strip as well as of the past 24 hours. Meanwhile, we have been able to hear that a significant spy ring, or at least the beginnings of the spy ring, are being uncovered throughout the entirety of Eastern Europe, as Greek authorities and Ukrainian authorities both arrested Chinese spies within their respective countries today, once again spying and attempting to gather military intelligence and data on key military systems and equipment of the two respective countries, and also NATO at large. This is once again following on the news of Chinese nationals spying on the Newport News shipbuilding yards here in the United States of America, inside of the state of Virginia, and it does appear that at the moment, the Western world at large is dealing with a large Chinese spy ring that is attempting to gather vital military intelligence for the People's Liberation Army back inside of Communist China. Outside of that information, we have also been able to hear that the People's Republic of China is busy attempting to arm the enemies of the Republic and the enemies of the Western sphere at large, as we have been able to hear that the Chinese government stated today that they are open to selling the J-10 CE Mighty Dragon to any country that is willing to fill in purchase orders. We've also been able to see a Antonov 124 privately chartered by the Chinese government to make a flight from China to Karachi in Pakistan, most likely providing more military arms and support to the Pakistanis in support of their eventual war efforts, which will most likely restart against the Indians at some point here in the near future. Outside of this information, we have also been able to hear in the United States of America that the United States has officially restarted military aid to the state of Ukraine, providing GMLRS and 155mm munitions across the Ukrainian border from Poland just earlier today. We've also been able to hear additional statements from inside the U.S. government, where we have been able to hear that the United States is soon to impose sanctions as requested by the president through the Congress against the Russian Federation. And we've also been able to hear that the White House is considering additional Patriot batteries for the state of Ukraine. We've also been able to hear that the U.S. Department of Defense will now be spending $1.3 billion on missile procurements for the Patriot air defense systems, attempting to up the number of available Patriot air interceptors to 11,860, at least according to the U.S. Department of Defense's public statements earlier today. We've also been able to hear a significant development that apparently the United States Secretary of Defense, or more so the Secretary of State, actually stated that the United States is going to have to supply and rearm the bulk of Europe, which has also expended a large amount of their American-bought military equipment supplying the Ukrainians, meaning more jobs for Americans that are better paying. Outside of that information, we have also been able to hear that the Russians have ended up dealing with a significant situation today in Veliki Novgorod, as a quite sizable substation has ended up exploding due to a Ukrainian attack and has knocked out the power grid for a fairly sizable city within the Novgorod Oblast. Outside of that, we've also been able to hear that the Russian Federation is actually replacing their combat forces with foreign labor at the moment, something that has usually been considered a not-so-Russian thing to do, as they are now importing 1.3 million Indian laborers to be brought into the country to replace Russians in the jobs that they once had before they were conscripted into the armed forces. This is also leading us to believe that conscription is far more widespread than we were anticipating, and that the Russian army is far larger than we're also hearing, at least in the public at the moment. We have also been able to hear that a independent investigation has uncovered that the Russian arms industry is largely using computer systems and technology that is still being sourced from companies inside the United States through third-party shell companies in other foreign countries. We have also been able to hear that the state of Ukraine has held their line today against the Russian Federation, inflicting high losses onto the Russians and stopping any advances where they lie. We have a great amount of significant news today, and when I say great, I do not mean it's great to hear some of the news, but it is quite large in scale and grand for that matter nonetheless. Nevertheless, we will be getting y'all into the past 24 hours of news, starting with our most significant development, that Red Sea traffic is practically stopped at this moment due to the attacks by the Yemeni Houthis, an Iranian force, inside of the southern Red Sea. From this point forward, we're going to be going with the official statements of the U.S. Secretary of State and the Department of State in saying that several months ago, Iranian proxy forces are Iranian forces directly, as we do see that they are operating in support of Iranian interests through the region. And not only that, are able to conduct the attacks that the Islamic Republic of Iran, at least on an official capacity, are not comfortable with conducting on their own. From this point forward, we are going to be referring to Hamas, Hezbollah, and the Houthis as Iranian forces on the channel, as it is quite clear that through their funding and command through the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps, they are an extension Iranian state militias. Nevertheless, we have been able to hear that the Yemeni Houthis have been continuing their acts of piracy within the southern Red Sea throughout the course of the day in the past 24 hours, attacking vessels within the region and practically stopping any vessels from passing through the southern Red Sea. We actually were able to get a decent amount of footage that was published by the Yemeni Houthis about the attacks on the Eternity Sea, which resulted in the deaths of 3 crew members yesterday and the wounding of about 4 more that were on board the vessel. We were able to see 2 independent videos released by the Yemeni Houthis showing their direct strike onto the vessel, which most likely killed the 4 crew members outright, and then the subsequent sinking of the vessel, where it sank from the stern downwards into the waters below in the southern Red Sea. And we can see here in the initial opening of the clip the main impact on the Eternity Sea, which was landed by the Houthis. We can see here a drone now circling over. We can see that there's clearly been a breach in the fuel tank at the back as there is an oil slick that is now forming along the water line. And we can also see that there appears to be two missile impacts that hit the rear hold right in front of the superstructure of the vessel that houses the bridge and also crew living quarters. This is where we believe some of the crew members ended up being unfortunately killed in the Houthi strike. We can also see that significant damage was caused to the superstructure as a result of the explosions and strikes, which once again is heavily inducing, at least at the moment, due to deductive reasoning, that this is the location at the rear part of the stern of the vessel, near to the superstructure, where the 3 crew members were unfortunately killed and the other 4 were wounded. We can see
also,
here,
Enforcer, what is the name of this vessel? One more time. Give me the name of the ship.
this vessel is named the Eternity Sea.
Okay, thank you. I wanted to do some quick checking real quick.
And we can see here another puncture that was actually caused technically above the water line, but at least as far as the oxide paint goes on the hull, this impact is actually technically below the water line in this vessel, and later the Yemeni Houthis will scuttle the vessel and sink it from the stern. We can actually see that one of the hulls is taking on water, and we can now see a time lapse of the sinking of the Eternity Sea, most likely with the unfortunate sailors on board who were killed still interred within the superstructure at the stern of the vessel. We can also see
it's really wild. The Houthis are trying to go through all this effort to sink every single one of these vessels. That's just clearly to like add salt to the wound, because they're already attacking the ships. They're taking people hostage. They're killing sailors as well, and then they're also sinking the entire vessel to add insult to injury. It's really just quite a thing. And also, look at that. What was that? A secondary explosion or something happening?
That appears to be some sort of a forceful explosion. If you look right here, you can actually see that the cargo hold was closed right there. So this appears to be a pressure explosion where the surrounding pressure of the water imploded the cargo hold doors on top of the cargo hold, and all of the air just vented out in a giant explosion right there. That's most likely what that is. But we can see here that the bow of the ship points upright into the air, and then at that moment, that's when the cargo hold, which is under a great deal of pressure from the sea, actually imploded, and all of the air exploded into the greater atmosphere, which you can see right there.
Also, by the way, from what I can tell, because I was trying to do some research real quick on this vessel appeared to not have an armed team of guards on board. It appeared to not be carrying anybody on board that was actually armed, at least according to what we're told publicly. So if it was carrying somebody, they didn't notify anybody of that. So that's quite interesting. The last vessel that we saw, the Magic Seas, which was allegedly carrying on board an armed team of guards, which is generally how the crew was able to escape and get out of the harm's way before the Houthis showed up to actually take the vessel. This one is a bit different, and we're being told that allegedly the Houthis have taken hostages off this vessel as well, which could explain why they were able to do that, because there wasn't an armed team on board.
And also to point this out, while Matthew's been speaking about the situation with security teams on board the vessel, just to once again further the idea that this was some sort of a pressurized hull explosion due to its depth within the water, you can actually see a second quote-unquote explosion of air happening from the last cargo hold at the bow of the vessel, which then was submerged, and after being submerged was subjected to extreme pressures, which created an air implosion, and then all of the air escaped to the surface after the cargo hold was breached. But nevertheless,
Enforcer, we do have some breaking news whenever you're ready.
And please go ahead. We are ready.
So right now, this very minute, let me go ahead and get this up on my main screen so I can actually read it off. We are seeing right now that Israel is currently under attack right this second, and it appears to be there are warnings popping up in Jerusalem and also central Tel Aviv right now as well. We're seeing that here on our map. It appears the launches are from Yemen, or the initial indications. So most likely the Houthis have launched some missiles at Israel right this very second. And I'm trying to get some more details here. Let's see. So yeah, we're being told that the Israeli Defense Forces detected missile launches targeting multiple areas in Israel, like I mentioned, and the Home Front Command is telling people to go inside and seek shelter immediately until they can neutralize the threat. And right now, it appears to be most likely the Yemeni Houthis that have fired these missiles. It is from Yemen, according to the reports that we have.
And it does appear that the Yemeni Houthis, while we're speaking about their criminal actions in the southern Red Sea, are once again conducting another criminal action against the state of Israel, launching ballistic missiles towards the Israelis. And at the moment, we are hearing that air raid sirens are now sounding throughout a large area of central Israel. And the Home Front Command has ordered that those citizens within those afflicted areas seek shelter immediately in bomb shelters. So it does appear that the Houthis are once again firing at the Israelis at this moment. While we were hearing about this news, and we'll most likely get some interceptor footage here very soon, we have also been able to see another clip showing us the attack that occurred against the Century Sea. We have to mute the footage because the Yemeni Houthis do not respect international copyright, and for this reason, all of the audio in their clips are actually copyrighted, so we'll have to mute it, but we will show you all the clip. We can see the firing here of some sort of a shore-based anti-ship missile of some sort. Fairly advanced, mind you. We see another one being fired. These all are being fired towards the Eternity Sea in this clip.
That's a lot of munitions they're sending out the way toward the ship. It makes you wonder how they're selecting these vessels. Does this appear to be another Liberian-flagged vessel, it appears to be? Yeah, flagged out of Liberia was the Eternity Sea. So it makes you wonder how they're picking these. It appears this was heading toward Somalia. Well, I said reported destination was Berbera in Somalia. So I don't know, like kind of weird how they're picking these.
I think they're largely picking them at random, kind of like they did the last time. They just generally would pick any ship at random and attack it. We saw that they attacked a wide variety of vessels. One thing I do want to point out, however, since the footage is a repeat from this point on, just showing the damage to the vessel, actually this has footage that we have not seen before, including close-ups of the superstructure as it was sinking. So I'll show you all these parts of the clips right here. But once again, it is showing that the Houthis are back to their normal kind of attacks that we've seen recently, and I do want to make it incredibly clear that this style of attack is the exact same kind that we saw the last time, which the United States used as a justification to start airstrikes against the Houthis. No American-flagged vessels were ever attacked directly as far as merchant vessels. In the last wave of Yemeni Houthi attacks, it was only merchant vessels that were flagged out of smaller countries like Panama, Liberia, and so on, although one of the vessels that was actually attacked was actually Russian, another was Ukrainian, really showing that the Houthis were going after any targets within the region, and regardless whether they ended up being of an allied country or not, they were attacking vessels just to completely stop the transit through the Red Sea, no matter who was trying to get through. But we can see here a time-lapse of the footage as the stern of the vessel is filling with water. This is generally where the engine bay of the vessel would be as well, so the engine room and the machinery spaces are currently filling with water. We can also see here that the superstructure at some point had been engulfed in fire, because you can actually see that there is visible fire scarring near to the windows, showing that there was a fire inside of the superstructure, which apparently burned all the way through, even up to the bridge itself, as the entirety of the superstructure is showing burn damage, as it showed that each deck caught on fire and then burned as a result of the original attacks. You can also see that this hold door back here at one of the rear cargo holds actually was ajar due to the force of the explosions of the missiles that landed and hit that cargo hold right in front of the superstructure. We can then see that rear cargo hold venting air as the water starts to fill in through the openings within the top of the cargo bay doors.
And what are the Houthis doing? Are they going on board and planting explosives like on board the ship, or are they just missiling it enough until it finally sinks?
On this particular vessel, we never heard that they went aboard. It appears that they fired anti-ship missiles and also drone-based munitions at it, and ended up hitting the vessel and sinking it only. They actually never boarded the vessel like they did with the Eternity Seas, well, actually not the Eternity Seas, the Magic Seas. They never boarded it like they did that vessel. Apparently, this one was just hit by anti-ship missiles and drones alone, and that was what resulted in the sinking of the vessel.
Interesting, because I saw some good speculation from some analysts this evening. They were all questioning how precise the explosion of the Magic Seas was when it went and sunk and went under the water. It was very, very precise, suggesting that there were onboard charges placed on there, and indicates a professional job, actually, the way that ship sunk. So some people were wondering how the Houthis get such knowledge like that, and how are they able to pull off such a precise sinking of the Magic Seas yesterday.
Well, it actually wouldn't take too much, because I'll actually show y'all here the difference between the Magic Seas and this last attack. The Houthis boarded this vessel and apparently actually had some time. We're assuming maybe several hours to plant these explosives and sink the vessel. They strategically planted the explosives, if we watch right here in this clip, to where they would explode and puncture every single watertight hold within the vessel, making sure that it would actually sink on an even keel and each watertight compartment would fill up at a uniform rate. That's why you would see that after these explosions went off, each in a specific watertight compartment, you would then see that the vessel actually sank at an even kill and actually didn't even take on a list. It's actually a little bit impressive, at least with the
Yeah.
execution of the sinking that they conducted, or the scuttling of the vessel. It was done well enough that the vessel did not list and that all watertight compartments filled equally. It wasn't until the very end of the explosion that there was any sort of a list to any direction, or that the bow or the stern was above each other in the sinking. But you can see right here, once again, you can see the venting of air and also the venting of fuel in some areas as all of the water is rushing into those openings created by the explosions and filling each watertight compartment equally. That's the very important part to understand between the Magic Seas attack and this attack on the Eternity Sea, which happened just yesterday, is that this one was done by an onboard crew of apparently some sort of sappers or explosive technicians that actually planted the explosives in strategic areas after they figured out where the watertight holds were. This is opposite to the Eternity Sea, which was attacked today and destroyed, which appears to have been hit by anti-ship missiles and drones alone, with no onboard involvement by the Houthis, which led to it sinking from the stern of the vessel, although there were other hits that were made within the midships area of the vessel as well. But you can see here the ship sinking. And once again, note, even as the main deck is starting to get near to the waterline or below it, the bow and the stern are still sinking at an equal rate and speed.
You got to admit that seems to be a pretty professional job. Like for them to know to go to each compartment hold where the water would fill up evenly like that. I'm not even sure really why they would do it like that. Why wouldn't they just like blow up one compartment and let it sink from the back? But they did it very professionally from literally every single point in the ship. That's fueling conspiracy theories out there. Me personally, I think it's just the Houthis doing some decent planning for once. But it's oddly a good job even for the ragtag Houthis.
It's an interesting job. I wouldn't say that it's extremely professional, because anyone with a head on them would generally understand that if you wanted to commandeer a vessel and scuttle it, you would want to make sure that all watertight holds are breached to ensure that it would sink. Because if they only placed explosives at the machinery spaces in the engine room, which is where these explosions went off, that means, well, actually these went off directly alongside a cargo hold, but the engine and machinery spaces are directly below the superstructure. This wouldn't take too much planning. All they have to go and do is find the watertight doors and compartments inside of the vessel, and then just go and plant explosives in the middle of each bulkhead, or not really bulkhead, but each watertight compartment space, and then make sure that they all simultaneously explode. It's not incredibly complicated to figure that out. Anyone who would have any knowledge in destroying or sinking a vessel, which is pretty easy to find out there. I mean, you can find the stuff online. They would generally know that this is a way to ensure that a vessel is sunk. Historically, this is what the Germans did in World War I with their U-boats whenever they were operating under cruiser protocols, is that they would surface the sub, command the merchant marine or whoever was on board, the sailors, to board their lifeboats and leave the vessel, and then the U-boat would fire its deck gun into the side of the merchant ship, wherever they assumed the watertight compartments were, so that way they would all fill equally and the ship would be ensured to sink. So this isn't really anything new or showing a high level of planning. This is generally standard procedure as far as it goes with sinking and destroying naval vessels, or any kind of merchant ships for that matter. It's just that we never expect this from the Houthis, because this is far beyond anything that they ever really show. They usually are, skidding a Dodge Charger around a roundabout somewhere in Sauna. So this is a little bit beyond their abilities, at least from what we know. But it is showing that they're trying to evolve a little bit. But beyond that, we also were able to hear that the Department of State did give an official statement today to the attack on the Eternity Sea and the Magic Seas just earlier today. And this is the official statement from the U.S. State Department, which is being taken as the official U.S. position on the situation in the Red Sea. The United States condemns the unprovoked Houthi terror attack on the civilian cargo vessels MV Magic Seas and MV Eternity Sea in the Red Sea, which resulted in the tragic loss of 3 mariners, with many others injured, and the complete loss of the MV Magic Seas and its cargo, now including the MV Eternity Sea as well, which was also completely lost. These attacks demonstrate the ongoing threat that Iran-backed Houthi rebels pose to freedom of navigation and to regional economic and maritime security. The United States has been clear. We will continue to take necessary action to protect freedom of navigation and commercial shipping from Houthi terrorist attacks, which must be condemned by all members of the international community. We have not heard of any official U.S. naval response at the moment to be able to go out into the area of the southern Red Sea and stop the Yemeni Houthis from attempting to attack further merchant vessels. But at this moment, we are effectively understanding that the Red Sea is pretty much closed for business, and most vessels are going to be going around the Horn of Africa instead of trying to make their way through the much shorter Suez Canal venture, which takes you through the Red Sea and the Mediterranean. We also were able to hear that earlier today, even another third vessel was attacked and is apparently sinking in the Red Sea after it was attacked this week by the Houthis. And Matthew, I was wondering, do we have any additional information or news on the fate of that crew or the vessels that were attacked earlier today? Because I was never able to get any updates to state specifically the name of the vessel, the type of the vessel, and the amount of crew members on board of this third vessel that was hit today, but we were able to hear of it. And do we have any other additional information that you were able to find through the course of the day?
So I'll be honest with you, the third vessel is a bit eluding at the moment. I'm not really able to find much detail on it whatsoever. So I've generally just stuck to the first two vessels, the Magic Seas and the Eternity. That's been the two ones I've focused on. The third one is still waiting on details. And I'll be honest with you, the third vessel that was allegedly struck or attacked by the Houthis, I've really not been able to get much info on that one at all. So I really can't tell you much.
And so, unfortunately, we do not have a lot of information on the third vessel, but hopefully we'll be able to get that information by tomorrow. Nevertheless, a lot of people have been putting in their thoughts and opinions currently on the current situation on the southern Red Sea and what the United States may do as a response. Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so we do have a lot of information on two different cargo ships that were sunk. Like we just mentioned, it was the Magic Seas was the first one. Then we saw the Eternity that was also attacked, the one we just watched in that video. So reports say the Houthis have sunk another one today, which was the Eternity, and have taken hostages in the Red Sea, according to early reporting. And what are your thoughts? 60% said this will force a U.S. response, while 21% said Israel will just bomb the Yemeni Houthis again, and 11% said it's just usual Houthi stuff, and there's nothing to be worried about whatsoever. Now, one thing about this is it is unusual because the Houthis are now systematically attacking and also sinking vessels one by one in the Red Sea. I can't really determine any specific pattern about the selection of these vessels. That's one question that I do have. Why are they selecting these specific vessels? Is there some link to Israel? Because apparently, if there is a link to Israel, it's not very obvious. These ships are Liberian flagged, and they appear to be going from destinations that do not go to Israel. They're going to Somalia, they're heading over to Egypt, and they're heading to different locations that are not going to Israel. So that's a big question to me. But the bigger question is how many hostages have been taken? And is it true that there has been indeed hostages taken off this vessel? Because if that is true, that's going to change the equation entirely. Now the Yemeni rebels would have hostages in their hand, and that would not be good. And that could force a U.S. response in the region if they've taken these hostages off that vessel. So that's a very big question right now, and we simply don't know the concrete answer to that question. But I'm with the 60%. If it is true that hostages have been taken, it probably will force a U.S. response along with Israel. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that I would be with the 60%. This has to force a U.S. response because the United States has a vested interest in the international freedom of navigation provided under maritime international law. It is a serious situation that we're seeing right now within the Red Sea. A lot of vessels have already been lost, resulting in hundreds of millions of dollars in losses. And not only that, there has been the deaths of several crew members within this area. It's making it such a perilous venture that all companies are going to be choosing to go around the Horn of Africa. And if y'all do not know, generally, how logistical structures work in the world is that you want to take the most efficient path and the fastest path as possible to wherever you're supposed to be heading. That's generally how you make the most money. And also another thing is that you want to make your ports of call, wherever the vessel stops for most merchant traffic, as short as practically possible. You want to be in, unloading, and loaded as quickly as you can and back out at sea. That is a guaranteed way to make the most money. And the fact of the matter is that a lot of these vessels that have currently contracted their cargoes to be shipped at a certain speed and a certain rate from places like Europe and the United States through the Mediterranean, through the Suez, the Red Sea, and then on into the Indian Ocean and elsewhere will not be able to guarantee those kinds of rates. And for that reason, these companies are going to be losing hundreds of millions of dollars in claims that these companies are going to be making because their goods are not being shipped on time like they were guaranteed contractually. Another issue with this is also This is greatly expanding Western supply lines, both for commercial and strategic purposes, and this could start to have a great impact on major military actions, at least from a military standpoint. And not only that, this could have a significant impact on global economies, especially within places like Europe and the United States, which decently rely on the cargo that's passing through the Suez Canal. For this reason, this is a direct threat at the moment to Western and American interests within the region, and it's highly pertinent and important at this point that we stop these actions from ever happening again. I would generally say that, at least from what we're seeing right now and from what we've seen in the past, airstrikes against the Houthis do not work. It is clear that bombing them again is not going to fix anything. There has to be a stronger response than we've seen last time, whether people like it or not. We cannot sit here and we cannot keep allowing the Houthis to interdict global trade whenever they feel pleased. Generally, it's not even the Houthis, it's the Iranians that are able to give the orders to the Houthis to interdict global traffic and shipping whenever they please. This is costing us lots of money here in the West right now, and this could end up starting to hit you folks at home, because a lot of the goods that y'all get, the consumer goods that you buy at your supermarkets right now, are most likely on board of a lot of these container vessels and other kinds of ships that are traveling through this very area right now. And the fact that they are having to take a longer venture means that the companies, the shipping companies, will raise their rates, and this means that it's more expensive for those goods to make it here to the United States and be sold in the supermarket, meaning that the prices are going to be going up. So in my opinion, I would have to say, to ensure the freedom of navigation, not only for U.S. vessels, but vessels that fall under the purview of Western interest, the United States needs to go into Western Yemen, and we need to deal with the situation any way we see fit, any way that it will actually fix this situation. And once again, we are to the point that negotiations do not fix this, airstrikes do not fix this. So the last thing that we have on the table that could end up trying to fix this is a armed ground invasion with a coalition of support from the region, most likely including the Saudis, the official Yemeni government, and other nations that would be willing to come along with us on this venture to crush the Houthis once and for all. We will attempt to try and create, at least in my opinion, a secure zone within Western Yemen that will be administered by Yemeni and Yemeni and Saudi Arabian peacekeepers, and the United States can then withdraw and focus on more serious issues that are affecting us at the moment, like preparations for conflict against the Russian Federation and the People's Republic of China here in the future. But it's quite clear and quite inevitable at this point that something must be done beyond airstrikes alone to deal with the Houthis. The airstrikes are not doing enough, and we have to do more to be able to deal with this problem. And so it does appear that a lot of people right now, because Matthew has wisely, with his all-seeing vision, actually put up a great question. I saw it. I actually smiled there for a second. I was like, oh, that's perfect. That's actually bringing us right into the next logical question. How should the United States deal with the Houthis? And people are answering this question right now, so the results are going to be fluctuating heavily while we talk about this. But Matthew, what are people thinking about it, and what are you thinking about it as well?
Okay, so it looks like most people believe the USA should deal with the Houthis by attacking Iran again very strongly. About 47% said that, so that appears to be the most popular option, while 30% said we should airstrike the Yemeni Houthis again in their own territory in Yemen, while 11% said we should leave it to Israel to deal with 100%. And this one's a bit tricky because the U.S. just got done airstriking the Yemeni Houthis a short while back. We sent in a bunch of bombers to go get them, and we did a decent job, but ultimately, though, the Houthis pretty much dodged most of it. They went underground, and it really didn't faze them very much because they're right back to attacking the ships in the Red Sea, and they're right back to attacking Israel, literally right this second as we speak. So clearly, the Houthis were not deterred, and even though they had a ceasefire with the United States, that ceasefire doesn't appear to have held up very well. It looks like it pretty much fell apart pretty quick. So the airstrikes, not really effective whatsoever, in my personal opinion. So the only way to properly deal with this is to either send troops in on the ground in Yemen to take care of the Houthis, which in my opinion is not a great idea right now with the context of the China and Russia threat. It's probably better to attack Iran again strongly and do another round of airstrikes to make the Iranians beg for mercy, so that way we can have leverage over the Houthis. We can tell the Iranians, tell your boys down there in the Yemeni area to stop attacking our ships, stop attacking the cargo vessels, and stop attacking Israel, or otherwise we're going to make you pay for it. That's the best way to handle it. Get leverage over Iran, and you get leverage over the Houthis. But Enforcer, what say you?
I would have to say that in my opinion, I believe that for the moment, considering that we're most likely apparently waiting and seeing what the Iranians are going to be doing, I think that's a bad idea. We should go ahead and start dealing with them again. But it's incredibly clear to me that the Houthis cannot be dealt with airstrikes. Airstriking them again would be insanity at this point. And just to make it a little bit clear, want to make it very clear for the record, Biden airstriked them and Trump airstriked them, and the Israelis have airstriked them through Netanyahu. No one of those three airstrikes so far has fixed this issue. Every single one of them was airstriking the Houthis for this very same reason, and none of them have fixed the problem. We were told under the Biden administration that the situation was fixed, it's all over. They stopped and it's all good. Then they started again. Then Netanyahu went down there and bombed them. They bombed them about 3 times now. And then they said the situation is fixed, the Houthis will be no more. And the Houthis keep firing ballistic missiles at the Israelis and keep attacking merchant shipping in the Red Sea, meaning that Netanyahu isn't right. The problem isn't no more. It's still there, and it's still a prevalent issue within this area. And then recently, Trump started the largest bombing campaign against the Houthis on top of the past 2 conducted by Biden and Netanyahu. And once again, it's been unsuccessful. We stated that we had absolutely defeated them. It was a total victory, a strategic victory by all measures, and that the Yemeni Houthis will never do this again. We had already been told that 2 times before by 2 different leaders, one president of the United States, one the prime minister of Israel, and the situation had not been fixed either time. And the 3rd time was supposed to be the charm. And we are seeing that the 3rd time certainly was not the charm, because people do not understand in any of these governments, under any of these administrations, that terrorists are not to be negotiated with and are not to be trusted under any circumstance. These people are cutthroat, backstabbing liars. That's what terrorists are, and that's what they always will be. These people will never agree to anything and hold their word. The only way to stop them from conducting future attacks against commercial shipping in the southern Red Sea and killing innocent lives of sailors is to go in there and deal with these people on the ground and to finish them off once and for all. Right now, the Iranians can't come and support them. The Chinese will hardly support anyone, at least if we get directly involved. They're going to back off a good bit because they're going to be scared about getting any kind of heat from the United States. The Russians can't get involved. The Yemeni Houthis, if we want to attack them and destroy them, will be entirely on their own. And not only that, I'm very certain, and almost entirely certain, that we could definitely get the Saudis and the Yemenis on board with joining a coalition with us to deal with the Houthis. The Houthis have fired at the Saudis. They have killed Saudi citizens near to the border of Yemen, and that would give the Saudis more than enough reason to join us in a coalition effort to crush the Houthis. The Yemeni government is still embroiled in a civil war at this moment against the Houthis, and they'd be more than happy to see that the major population centers of the country that they are legitimately in charge of would come back under the control of the official Yemeni government. This is something that I think we have to do. I would not say that attacking Iran is a surefire answer, at least at the moment. I would say that attacking the Houthis and destroying them once and for all and putting a coalition peacekeeping force in the area, largely led by the Saudis, would be probably our most prudent option at the moment. I see some people saying that the Israelis should deal with it. I don't know if y'all know this, but the Israelis do not really have the airlift power projection abilities to keep a peacekeeping force or an invasion force inside of Yemen for that long. Logistically, they don't really have the ability to do that. So it would be better for the Saudis and the Yemeni government to do it because they actually have a land border connection with the Houthis. We will be there, of course, and we will have forces on the ground, at least at the opening phases, when we're actually crushing the Houthis and rolling into their territory. But right after that, the U.S. has got to leave. The Saudis, I hope the Saudis and the Yemenis understand they'll have to. We have bigger fish to fry out there. This is a fairly major issue at the moment for global shipping, but at the same time, we are facing down pretty much the barrel of the gun with the Chinese and the Russians, and we can't be tied up for too long somewhere trying to fix this issue when the Saudis and the Yemenis could certainly deal with it after we help them do the heavy lifting, at least at the opening part of the conflict. But with that in mind, I think that is a clear answer.
I still think, Enforcer, I still think that if you were to go into Iran and strike them again, honestly, I'm still a huge proponent of regime change inside of Iran. I think regime change should be the ultimate goal of Israel and the United States, because as long as the Ayatollah is in charge of Iran, that country is going to be a rogue state that is causing hell in the region. So if you go in there and you get those guys out of there, and I know some people are going to be like, well, the guy that comes in after the Ayatollah could be worse. Well, that's a better option to contend with than what we currently got. We know the current guy's crazy. He's trying to develop a nuke, and he's not going to stop. He's made that perfectly clear. And now he's telling his forces in Yemen and telling his forces all over the place in Gaza and everywhere else to start attacking Israel again. And not only are they attacking Israel, they're also attacking just random cargo ships that are trying to go conduct business. So if you take care of the head of the snake, I'm a huge proponent of that. If you do that in Iran, you will basically take away the decision-making center for the Houthis. The Houthis are way weaker without the Iranians telling them what to do. They'll basically lose their sense of direction, and even though they'll still be motivated by ideology, they won't be motivated by basically having a figurehead, which is the Ayatollah right now, telling them when to attack and what to attack at his behest. That would severely diminish the Houthi threat by a long shot, in my opinion.
I would agree. I would say that it is good to cut off the head of the snake. I'm still a massive proponent of that as well. But with what we're seeing right now, this is a situation in the southern Red Sea that even if we attack the Iranians, this situation could persist for months, maybe even a year, if we don't get involved and do something directly to stop them again. They'll just keep doing it until they run out of munitions. And we don't really know how many anti-ship missiles or how many explosives in just total tonnage that they have that they could just keep sailing out into the Red Sea and pretty much denying access to the Suez at large by these actions. So while I'd certainly agree that cutting off the head of the snake is something that the United States should be working towards and should largely be executing a plan of action right now on that matter, I also say we have to have some sort of an individual response to the Houthis. As far as Hamas and Hezbollah goes, I really don't care about them, folks. I actually am in the mindset that that's an Israeli issue. It's inside the Gaza Strip and inside of southern Lebanon. They have a direct land border with that. The United States need not get involved in every tiny conflict in the world. That's an Israeli problem. But this one's affecting global shipping right now in the southern Red Sea. This is an American problem right down there at the moment right now. So with that in mind, I would say that it's very important that we deal with this situation right now. Even if we're going to cut off the head of the snake with the Iranians, we don't want the Yemenis to keep on causing undue damage and close off such a vital shipping lane for that long. It's a dangerous sort of a situation. Because really quickly to show you all this is actually a traffic map of global shipping, and you can actually see right there that the southern Red Sea, the entirety of the Red Sea, as a matter of fact, including the Mediterranean, is dark red. That is showing the highest traffic density of usually somewhere over 1.5 thousand voyages per month, as a matter of fact, by this map that pass through this area. So every single month that passes that the Yemeni Houthis are closing off this strait due to the threat of getting your sailors killed and your vessels destroyed, they are causing 1,500 ships to have to take the voyage around Africa instead of the shortest path from the United States to Asia, which is directly through the Mediterranean and then on through the Suez Canal and through the Red Sea. So this is a major shipping lane. Make no mistake, this has a massive impact on global shipping at the moment if the Houthis keep doing this. Even if we dealt with the Iranians right now, the Houthis will still have the firepower and the missilery to be able to keep doing these sorts of acts of piracy and terror for months and months on end. So I think the best idea would actually be to blend both of our ideas and cut off the head of the snake, but also deal with the Houthis with a coalition and small expeditionary force at the same time, so that way we can ensure that the damage to that major shipping lane is mitigated as much as possible, and at the same time we're cutting the head off of that snake to make sure that it will never happen again after we deal with the Houthis and the Iranians, hopefully in one fell swoop.
And also another thing they could do as well is they could simply up the naval presence in the Red Sea. I'm not sure if you were saying that just a minute ago, but they could up the naval presence there significantly. So that way, if we hear of an attack on one of these vessels, we can literally start firing missiles right back into Yemen from one of our battleships, or not battleships, but one of our warships in the region. Because I'm not really sure what our naval deployments look like right now in the Red Sea. It must not be that heavy because we're not able to protect the cargo vessels very well. So that would also be something else to do as well. But where are our deployments? I guess that's the first good question to ask. Do we know where our deployments are currently in that region?
I believe that most of our fleets, specifically the carrier strike groups of the Nimitz and the Carl S. Vinson, are currently off in the Arabian Sea somewhere. So they're too far away to provide direct air support or air defense to those vessels that are being attacked right now inside the southern Red Sea. And sending one of those larger fleets, like largely the 7th Fleet, into the Red Sea with a carrier strike group would be near suicidal, because we'd be putting that carrier literally within several dozen miles of being attacked by an anti-ship missile. So it'd be a little bit too dangerous for the kind of assets we have in the area currently and the carrier strike groups to go into the southern Red Sea. We would actually have to relocate independent destroyers, Arleigh Burke class or Ticonderoga destroyers and missile cruisers, to head into the southern Red Sea to try and provide a defense umbrella. But even still, with that, it's still dangerous, because under the past attempts at that, and there was a massive effort, mind you all, that was conducted under the current administration and the prior administration to put enough naval assets in the southern Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden to stop any of these attacks. Even with that massive naval presence, the attacks still persisted, and every once in a while the Houthis got lucky and still ended up hitting a vessel and sinking it. So it's still a high risk. It's a high risk area even if we have the Navy directly within the strait, and that's why I think that's important that we just deal with the Houthis on the ground, because that is the only way to ensure that the Houthis are dealt with once and for all and cannot hurt, damage, or kill any sailors or vessels within the southern Red Sea from this point on into Kingdom Come or Armageddon, whichever one comes first.
Very interesting. And also, by the way, Enforcer, I did pull up a chart showing our deployments. I was trying to find this, and our good friend In Ellis over there does really good work tracking down the vessel deployments. Does have a pretty recent map. It's not like within a few days recent, it's about a week old, but it shows here that apparently the USS Gerald R. Ford is at the north end of the Red Sea currently right now. So they're not down there where the Yemeni rebels are attacking. They're more toward the north, which is sort of out of the region where the Yemeni rebels are attacking these cargo ships. We do see here as well that apparently the USS Carl Vinson and also the USS Nimitz appears to be what appears to be in the Indian Ocean. It appears to be so they're not exactly. Say what now?
Arabian Sea.
Yeah, Arabian Sea. I can't really tell from here. It's like very small on my screen. But the Arabian Sea, where they appear to be, which is near Yemen, but they're not over in the Red Sea where they're attacking right now. So it appears we really don't have anything in that area at the moment. So it appears to be that maybe Europe has some ships there, but we don't.
I don't think the Europeans even really have a large amount of ships there. We've heard of maritime patrols, but I haven't heard of any French, German, or British vessels that are currently in that area at the moment either. So I do not believe that there are any naval assets present within the southern Red Sea right now beyond maritime patrols, which only can conduct a reconnaissance level operation. They're not involved in active defense of the merchant ships in the Red Sea at the moment.
Yeah, that would be another big step to take is we need to simply put some naval assets in that area to at least be able to help defend some of these cargo ships. That's a first step right there that would obviously be a big help. And I wonder why we haven't done that. Like it seems to be common sense to do that, but we haven't really moved any of our ships over to that area to stop it. So a little bit interesting.
Also, this map here, folks, by the way, great shout out to Ian Ellis, but I want to point this out. This is only following the LHD and CSG groups that we currently have underway. It's not tracking every destroyer and cruiser that we have, because there are a decent amount of destroyers and cruisers that are not attached to CSGs or LHD groups. So there are a lot of vessels, actually, that would be on this map that are not accounted for at the moment, at least according to this illustration. Big shout out, though, to Ian Ellis for always gathering this data and info. It's very important. But at the same time, it doesn't appear that we have any available assets in the southern Red Sea to protect the strait from these sorts of attacks. And also, even with the Gerald R. Ford in the northern Red Sea, as far as its air defense umbrella goes that it can provide, it's too far away to respond in time to be able to stop the attacks against these merchant ships. And it also would be incredibly dangerous, most likely at this moment, to send that carrier strike group through the strait, because the entire fleet or the entire strike group would have to fit within this 22-mile wide strait, which persists for about 70 miles, and then at its most narrow point, the entire carrier strike group would have to pass through a 12-mile wide strait, meaning that they're quite literally in a gauntlet at that moment, and it would be pretty hard for them to try and evade, conduct evasive maneuvers, or do anything rather than fire off their vertical launch systems and pray to God that they were able to shoot most of everything down if the Yemeni Houthis tried to overwhelm the fleet's air defense systems. So the chances of the Ford passing through this area, at least at the moment, it's going to be a little iffy. They might decide to push it on through and just hope that they're able to defend against any incoming air targets. But at the same time, they may also decide to just loiter in the northern Red Sea until they're able to get a larger air defense umbrella made within the area in advance of the carrier, and then just push the carrier on through once it's a lot safer at that point. But still, it is a very serious situation that we're seeing in this area. And once again, folks, I gotta say, if we see that nothing is working, we can't keep sitting here and we can't keep doing the same thing or doing nothing. And I keep seeing people, like, it's always funny to me. I gotta point this out. People say that America is not respected. America is a joke, and that we should be strong and we should represent ourselves on the world stage like a big boy. And those very same people, because I know who they are, and I know a decent bit about all of these people who say this sort of stuff. Those very same people who say that America was taken as a joke by the last administration, and then say the exact same thing about the current administration, that actually we should be weak and we should not do anything against the Houthis, even if the only option we have is to go on the ground. We shouldn't do that because that's too much. We should be weak instead. I don't know what it is with these people. They're not happy with anything, but to be entirely honest, we can't really make decisions off of people who are going to be unhappy with every option. If we do nothing, we're weak. If we do something, then we're doing too much. We've got to go in there. We've got to deal with the problem. That's just the honest truth of it. If you don't like that, I'm sorry, but the world doesn't revolve around you. It revolves around the nation and its best interests. So that's the decision that we're making at the moment, and that's what we have to do. But if the United States government was smart at the moment, we would start to deal with the Iranians and the Houthis at the same same time and fix this problem once and for all before we start dealing with even larger issues like the Chinese and the Russians, which are coming around soon. And these sorts of supply line issues, while seeming minor right now, end up becoming giant mountains once a conflict starts, because then everything's having to take an extra week or two to make it anywhere, and then that becomes a serious, major issue. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that the best I can, at least in my opinion currently. And with that, it's actually time for us to finally move on out of this little piece of the news, because we actually have major news coming out of other regions as well. We were able to hear, and I'm going to be covering these stories both at the same time, that Chinese nationals were arrested in Greece, and Chinese nationals were arrested by the SBU in Ukraine for conducting spying and espionage attempts against Greek and Ukrainian military technology. In Ukraine, a Chinese national was attempting to try and steal missile secrets of the Neptune anti-ship missile, and in Greece, they were attempting to gather information on the Rafale F-3R jets of the 114th Combat Wing of the Greek Air Force. Both of these attempts happened today, and both groups of Chinese nationals were arrested today. This is once again another rash of Chinese spies traveling around Western countries and attempting to gather as much military intelligence as they can. I also want to keep in mind
you know what's hilarious about this is China's version of R&D, like research and development, is sending spies around to go steal blueprints. They don't have to go through the process of, like, for example, like when we made the SR-71 or anything like that, we had to test it extensively. We had to figure out how it works. We had to develop all this stealth technology, and they don't have to do anything. All they have to do is just simply send the guys over, steal some blueprints, take them back, and then rename it, tweak a few parts, and they're good to go.
Yeah, and you know what's crazy, man, is it wasn't that long, if y'all don't remember, or do remember, I'm not really sure which, but it wasn't that long ago that a Chinese national was flying a drone over Newport News shipyard and taking pictures of the ships that were being built inside the shipyard, and I believe he was put in prison for a couple of years. But it is an endless rash of these people coming from China and conducting these kinds of intelligence gathering operations. This is an insane amount. And I also want to keep in mind to all of y'all that there is a large amount of Chinese-owned land inside the United States that was bought up from farmers, all of it near larger or more sensitive military bases and complexes throughout the country. And so it does appear that at this moment, it's becoming incredibly obvious, if people cannot tell, that Chinese are not the Americans' friends. They're not the West's friends. And while we have a large trade relationship with them, even in the present day, they're still our third largest trading partner at the moment. That does not mean that they are our friends or we have to treat them as a friendly nation. I'd actually say that I believe at this point, considering the clear evidence that we have, that the Chinese are conducting endless spy operations around the world against the United States and the Greater West, that we need to see that Congress declares an order to seize Chinese-owned properties in the United States through actions of the federal government. And we also need to see, most likely, that a travel ban is issued against Chinese nationals traveling out of the People's Republic of China into the United States in particular, or any other Western nations for that matter, because it appears that there is a decent chance that if a Chinese national is traveling abroad, they are most likely maybe conducting illegal spying operations or espionage actions against Western countries. I mean, they're already supplying weapons to literally every Tom, Dick, and Harry in the world right now that's against the United States and against our interests, and then they're sending every Tom, Dick, and Harry from China around into Western countries to try and conduct spy operations. I mean, it's quite obvious that the Chinese are not a friendly nation to us, and that a decent amount of their Chinese nationals may be traveling abroad not to get any kind of R&R. It looks like they're trying to do some R&D possibly instead. But beyond that, we will be waiting to see what kind of actions or developments result, because we are seeing that favors for the Chinese are starting to wane. A lot of people are starting to realize what they're up to. The Ukrainians just released a round of sanctions against them yesterday. The United States did get into a trade war with China just earlier this year. But we are seeing that a lot of people are not really viewing the Chinese as that benevolent, nice little commie country that a lot of people always like to treat them as through the 70s up until the 2010s. But with that, I hope we were able to address that story well. It's still a very concerning one at the least. And we also were able to hear, speaking of the Chinese supplying the enemies of the Republic in the the West at large with weaponry, that the Chinese are now openly broadcasting to the world through the defense ministry that it is willing to supply J-10s to friendly countries, responding to recent reports that Iran is seeking to acquire the J-10 Mighty Dragons. It does appear that at the moment, the People's Republic of China is making it openly clear that they are more than happy in arming and supporting the enemies of the United States and the enemies of the West, wherever they may be around the world. And not only that, we were able to hear of a privately commissioned flight from the People's Republic of China today on board a Antonov 124 from the Uyghur regions of western China and down into the area of Karachi inside of Pakistan, and most likely another form of military support or arms support to the Islamic Republic of Pakistan, which is soon to most likely begin another conflict against the Republic of India to try and open up the closed dams inside the Jammu and Kashmir region, which is greatly affecting the availability of fresh water within the Islamic Republic of Pakistan at the moment. So it does appear that the Chinese are getting a little bit active out there, at least in supporting anti-American actions or interests, and it appears that the United States needs to wise up to this and start taking appropriate actions against Chinese influence or Chinese abilities to conduct this form of spying or espionage throughout the entirety of the Western world. And a lot of people are also talking about the fact that the Chinese are stating that they will supply J-10s to friendly countries around the world. Matthew, what are people thinking about that, and what are you thinking about that as well?
All right, so it's very odd timing about the sudden announcement by China to sell the J-10 fighter jets to all friendly nations that want them, because they literally just announced that after they said that Iran was seeking to purchase them just a couple of days back. So the timing is certainly really, really odd, and to me, it seems like it could be a cover. But about 50% said China was going to do this anyway, while 45% said it's a cover to sell them to Iran, and 2% said it seems odd on timing, but I'm not really sure. I don't know. And like I said, me personally, seems really, really odd, because China was really not willing to sell these to anybody until all of a sudden Iran became interested, and now China's willing to sell it to everybody. And in my opinion, that's a plausible way for China to say, look, we're not supplying these just to Iran, we're going to sell them to anybody that wants them. So to say that we're doing this to spite the United States by selling them to Iran, that's nonsense. That gives them a plausible cover story to say that. So I'm with the 47%. I think they're trying to do this to create a narrative, so it doesn't look like they're trying to spite the West directly. It looks like they're just doing Iran the same way they do any other country, by selling them these fighter jets. But I'm still curious how Iran can even afford them. That's kind of curious to me as well. But Enforcer, what say you?
I bet you they're getting a significant discount, kind of like a lend-lease of a sort, possibly, and that's how they're affording it. But I would have to agree with Enforcer Matt and the 47%. This is most likely going to be a cover to sell them to the Iranians and possibly even other countries around the world, maybe even the Russians, because we do know that the Russian aviation industry has taken a fairly big hit at the moment, and it's not looking like it's doing the Russians all too well, and they might actually be looking to try and source aircraft from elsewhere, the Chinese being the only manufacturer that would sell to the Russians right now, if things continue to degrade in the future on the diplomatic level. So I actually would have to say that I believe it is a cover to sell them to Iran, at least at the moment. But with that, I hope that does address that well. And I also saw someone say, let's see, someone said somewhere in the chat, it was a very interesting one. Someone said, well, the beef isn't with the Chinese people. The Chinese people are really cool. The issue is, though, like, here's the issue, is that you can't work off of that assessment, because it ends up creating a pretty bad situation in the long run. I'll explain why. Yes, Chinese people are cool. German people are cool. French people are cool. North Koreans, believe it or not, are actually pretty cool. The Iranians are pretty cool as a people. But the issue is that we're dealing with their governments. We're not dealing with the people. Everyone's going to be cool. I mean, you're generally not going to run into a lot of assholes out there, unless if you're, say in Alabama. Then you'll run into a lot of them. But elsewhere, you generally wouldn't. The issue with that, however, is that a lot of these countries are hoping that you have that kind of a positive mindset. And then you go, oh, well, we can't stop all of these Chinese nationals from traveling abroad, because then we would be punishing all of these innocent, nice Chinese people, which is true, for traveling abroad to our country and wanting to take a look at it. But the issue with that is that with those people, all these great Chinese nationals who spend their money in our countries over here on tourism, the Chinese are slipping in people who are doing nefarious things. And the nefarious things that they are doing is greatly undermining any kind of income that we were making off of Chinese tourism or Chinese consumption of Western media or anything else along those lines, because they are coming over here and they're doing things like taking pictures of the propeller blades of brand new submarines being built in Newport News. And with that information, they send that back to the PRC and they go, okay, here you go. This is the exact propeller profile of a new submarine that the United States is making. And then the Chinese government now knows exactly what the frequency is and what kind of cavitation is created by that propeller, because they will rebuild it and create simulations with it. And then they'll be able to know exactly where about 128 U.S. sailors are, several hundred feet under the sea, and kill them. And that ends up being a bit of a bad situation. It kind of is outweighing the value of saying that we're friends with everyone and the world is a great place, when you know that a decent amount of these foreign nationals might be coming into the Western world to conduct more than nefarious acts to undermine our national security and pretty much undermine the entire benefit of allowing Chinese nationals into the Western world. I know that sounds very unfortunate to a lot of people that would like to get along with folks, and I do have to agree. Every time I've ever seen any Chinese citizens on video, they always seem pretty interesting. They're pretty cool people. They're like everyone else. But the problem is that we're having to deal with their government more so than them. So we have to largely work with it on that metric, and not the metric of, oh, we'll just forget their government and let these spies in, possibly. That's really the issue that we're working with, at least at the moment. It's kind of like saying, oh, well, like the North Koreans won't allow anyone into their country, and we know that they want to kill the wicked imperialists, but we're going to allow North Koreans into the United States all day and night. They can go anywhere and do anything they want because we like to have North Korean tourists around, because the North Koreans are an unfortunate people being subjected to horrendous living conditions by their horrendous government. The North Koreans will love to hear that, because they'll be sending over a lot of people who are spies to take pictures of sensitive sites, sensitive bases, sensitive facilities, try and gather more information about troop movements, those sorts of things. That is incredibly dangerous for our national security, and not only that, dangerous for soldiers and service members who are in the armed services right now. So, that's something that I generally have to say. I understand where people are coming from with that, but you also have to understand the national security implications behind making that kind of a statement or an assumption, is that it could end up costing precious lives of our members of the service at the moment. And so with that, I hope that addresses that the best I can. But before we move on into the rest of our news for the rest of the night, which we still have quite a lot, mind you, all to cover. We have the U.S. news, the European news, and then the Ukrainian news, but the U.S. and European news is a little bit small. But beyond that, we do have to make sure to get into a couple of questions. And Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our first super chat of the night, this one goes to none other than BC Skyman, which is, of course, a longtime channel legend, a cornerstone of the channel, some might say, and he puts in a $70 donation. And thank you very much, BC, for that generous support once again. There is no comment attached to it, but of course, thank you very much, BC, once again, for always supporting the channel and being very important to the channel running itself. And Enforcer, what say you?
And Matthew, I actually think he may have thrown in 120. Yeah, he actually did, because he threw in 250s and a 20. But I got to think.
Oh, he did? I missed one of them.
Yeah, he did, actually. But I got to thank you for the massive $120 super chat, BC Skyman. You didn't throw in a comment, but the support is absolutely incredible and helps this channel to keep on running. If it wasn't for folks like you, we would have never been able to make this channel possible and keep it running. And I got to thank you incredibly so much for that, because folks like you, who are old guards and channel legends, have been making it possible for us to cover the news on this channel for years, and hopefully years well on into the future. And so with that, a big, huge thanks to you so much once again. I hope that has addressed that incredibly well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, folks, stand by for after our question segment here. After the next two questions, we do have some breaking news coming out. We're seeing interceptions right now in Israel, and we'll get to that here in just a second. But our next super chat here goes to Rick Galinchin, who puts in a $30 donation. And thank you very much, Rick, for that support as well. And Rick said, thank you for your hard work, guys.
And I thank you so much for enjoying our hard work, Rick Galinchin, and supporting it, because if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to keep the hard work up, because we wouldn't be able to do this as our full-time job. So a massive thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that incredibly well. And if it wasn't for folks like you, we wouldn't be able to work hard at it every day and keep this news rolling every single 24-hour period. And so with that, we are on to the last question of the segment, and then we're going to be getting y'all right back into the news with some breaking news from the state of Israel. So what do we got, Matthew?
All right, so the last super chat here goes to Mr. Rhythm, who puts in a $20 donation, and thank you very much, Mr. Rhythm, as well, for that support. He said the response will be, quote-unquote, proportional.
And I thank you for the support. And, well, you never know these days. Proportional isn't exactly proportional, or it's over proportional. You just can't really tell. But I suppose that would be an accurate assessment. Maybe it is proportional, perhaps. But with that, I hope that does address that well. I thank you massively for support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, I understand, Matthew, moving out of this question segment, that we actually have breaking news coming out from the state of Israel.
So yes, right now we do have breaking news right now. Recall earlier we did mention that there was an ongoing attack from the Houthis in Yemen on Israel, specifically targeting Tel Aviv and also Jerusalem as well. And we did see the red alerts and sirens going off from that. We've now gotten footage here showing some interceptions inside of Israel using the Arrow 3 system, which is an exo-atmospheric interception system that was used to shoot down these ballistics. So let's take a look.
And this is actually, I believe, the Arrow 3 right here.
It is.
And we also have some additional clips as well. It appears that that may actually be the same arrow, so we'll be moving up here to our next clip, which is this one right here.
Also, by the way, it appears to be, based on what I'm seeing right now, apparently there is an all clear being declared by the Home Front Command. And it appears to be most likely that most of the areas that were under an alert are now all cleared, according to what we're seeing from IL Red Alert on Twitter. So that could have been it. It was a very small attack, it appears like, a small amount of ballistics that were fired by the Yemeni rebels at Israel. And it looks like all of them were intercepted, at least according to early reports. So it was pretty much just another symbolic attack, really, not really a major one. Thankfully, it was nothing severe, nothing destructive toward Israel.
Luckily, it wasn't. It does appear that, once again, much like many Houthi attacks, it was a very small amount of missiles and didn't really have any major impact at all. It didn't even have a marginal impact on Israel. Israel was able to manage to shoot all of them down. But moving on from that, now of the news from East Asia and the Middle East, it's time for us to move on into the news in the United States of America, as we were able to hear today that apparently the Secretary of State has stated that Europe's arsenal has been depleted by support for Ukraine, and NATO will have to replenish its artillery and air defense stockpiles. This, according to the Secretary of State. Interestingly enough, a lot of those air defense stockpiles and artillery systems are provided by none other than the United States of America, and their ammunition is provided by none other than the United States of America, meaning that we will most likely be seeing more jobs in this country as those countries in Europe start to fill out purchase orders for artillery and other forms of ammunition that they'll be able to use to rebuild their stockpiles, meaning that there are going to be American jobs that'll start to open here soon that hopefully will be well paying. But with that, I hope that was able to cover that little story well, kind of a little bit of a positive note there at the moment. And we also were able to hear that the President of the United States is currently considering additional Patriot air defense systems to Ukraine. We haven't been able to hear a confirmation that that's going to happen yet, but it's being considered. And we've also been able to hear that the United States is going to be imposing sanctions against 22 entities in Hong Kong, the United Arab Emirates, and Turkey for facilitating Iranian oil sales that benefited the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps and Quds forces, which are both a designated terrorist organization. We could actually see that statement being put out by the U.S. Department of Treasury just earlier today. We have also been able to hear, on top of that, at least in the U.S. news at the moment, that the United States is to spend, at least according to the Department of Defense, $1.3 billion on Patriot missiles for the fiscal year beginning October 1st, which is going to be happening soon. Apparently, a panel of high-ranking Army officials raised its buying plan for the Patriot Interceptor from to 13,773 from 3,376. So we're actually going to be getting an additional 10,000 Patriot interceptors in the next year, as compared to the only 3,376, which were originally at least purchased or pre-purchased or pre-ordered, as they call it, for the next fiscal year. But it does appear, at least in my opinion, that we should be rapidly upping that number. I think we should up it to maybe 20,000 or so, because it's quite clear that we'll be needing a lot of these, not only for the United States, but for Europe and Ukraine into the future, and it would be good to see that we have enough to pass around with extra to spare, especially considering that it only cost $1.3 billion. That's not really a lot. That's not a lot at all, folks. That's crazy. $1.3 billion for nearly 14,000 interceptors. I mean, what is this, unlimited soup and salad at Olive Garden? I mean, that's a pretty freaking large amount of interceptors right there for $1.3 billion. You would think that they would up it a little bit more, because considering the fact that $1.3 billion is hardly the cost of putting up a couple of F-35s into the sky, or just building them for that matter, or really it's only the cost of a single Patriot air defense system. Why wouldn't we produce a decent bit more of these? I do not know. But hopefully we'll see that that is enough interceptors, not only for the United States, but to pass around as well. Outside of the U.S. news, we have also been able to hear inside of Europe that the French have denied Ukrainian demilitarization by all measures. We've been able to hear that according to a statement by Lecornu, which I believe is the foreign minister, or actually he's the minister of defense, he stated that our absolute red line is the demilitarization of Ukraine. We must be consistent. We cannot deny Ukraine membership in NATO and at the same time agree that it should not have an army. Ukrainians must be able to ensure their own security. And that was according to Lecornu, the Minister of Defense of France, speaking largely on the behalf of the French foreign policy position on Ukraine. Also, you got to shout out those French berets in the background that are worn by their Alpine units, which are pretty much their mountain troops. It's their version of a Jaeger unit or a mountaineer unit. Pretty interesting sort of a headpiece or headgear right there. But moving on from that and on out of that news in France, we were able to hear that the United States has resumed its arms supplies to the state of Ukraine with 155 millimeter artillery shells and GMLRSs once again being moved across the border into the state of Ukraine from Poland. That was after a temporary pause by the U.S. Department of Defense, which is sworn up and down to have not been approved by the orders of the president, but was instead done unilaterally by the Secretary of Defense. I'll have to be honest with y'all, I'm finding that to be a little bit of a dubious claim, because the fact that the state of Ukraine and the Ukraine war is one of the largest foreign policy issues at the moment, I generally would assume that the Department of Defense would not conduct any actions altering the situation with Ukraine military support without authorization of the president, considering the high-profile matter and severity of this foreign policy incident. So with that in mind, I'm finding that statement to be a little bit odd to sell, or at least to believe at the moment, but I'm going to leave it at that. Nevertheless, we
And also, if he did that, how come he's not fired? How come he still has a job? Because that would be a violation of the decision-making process. So I don't know. It seems a little bit weird.
Yeah, that would be like the Secretary of State going out and saying, "We want to kill every single so and so in this country somewhere," and that wasn't done by the authorization of the president, or that wasn't run by the president. It's like that would be grounds to remove the Secretary of State. So it's like, how in the hell does it's like how in the world are people believing? I just got to say this really quickly. The story about the Secretary of Defense just doing that on his own. This isn't a reality TV show where you get to do stuff on your own. You get the boot if you do that, and I'm generally believing that he didn't do that on his own. I'm just going to say that because if he did, he'd be fired, or at least he should be fired. And if he isn't being fired, why the hell is he not being fired? Is he the one who has the list? Like, who has like is the list being thrown around like a football? What's going on out here? Who in the world's got the dirt on who at this point? I don't know. But anyways, with that, we are going to be moving on down into Zhytomyr at the moment for some unfortunate news, as we did get to hear that the Ukrainian airbase near to Ozerne was hit by the Russians earlier in the day, and we were able to confirm by the NASA FIRM satellite that there is a significant fire that has broken out near to the Ozerne airfield. Where you once again see that the FIRM satellite was showing that, and we can also see the cruise missiles fired by the Russians coming in and hitting the Ozerne airbase in this clip as well.
Oh.
They're saying, the rumor is that these are Kinzhal hypersonics. We were not able to independently confirm that with any video or picture evidence of the missile debris, but we were largely taking that and running with it at face value. Because I'll be honest with you, the sound of that turbine whir as the missile was coming in, that's not really indicative of a Kinzhal. We've seen a Kinzhal impact before, and it is so fast that it will be a lot like the Fata 1s that were fired against the Israelis. It would come in, and you wouldn't even hear it before it hit. It would literally come in, create a sonic boom, and slam into the target by the time you heard the sonic boom, at least from this angle. I'm thinking these are more so conventional cruise missiles than that of a Kinzhal, from their speed and also the sound that they're making. It sounds honestly more like a Caliber than anything. Yeah, see, that's a Caliber. Like, let me go pull up a Caliber missile, because it's got wings. Kinzhals do not have wings. They go a little bit too fast for that. So, Caliber missile. Let me go pull that up really quickly. Here you go. This is a Caliber. As y'all can see, winglets. this thing clearly has stubby winglets. You can see them right there. Like they're fairly pixelated, but you can see them, and they do have a very distinct sound. I've heard these things a lot through the years. You cannot mistake a Kinzhal for a Caliber. It's a completely distinct sort of a missile.
Ебанутый нахуй. Пиздец. Просто
Now that one might have actually been a Kinzhal because we didn't hear that one come in. It just exploded.
пиздец.
But that's the end of that clip, but still largely showing us a decent amount of information and details about the unfortunate attack at Ozerne. We're not entirely sure what Ukrainian air assets were stationed at that airbase, but if they were on the ground during the course of that attack, they most likely did suffer heavy damage, and several airframes may have been unfortunately lost as a result of that attack. Outside of that news, in the Zhytomyr Oblast, we have also been able to hear, near to the Ukrainian front lines in the Kursk Oblast, that the 3rd Brigade is, of course, ensuring that they are clearing out Russian positions with drone-only assaults, which is pretty impressive. Most Ukrainian brigades have almost moved entirely into drone warfare alone, as manpower is starting to become incredibly scarce in Ukraine, and for this reason they're trying to conserve the losses of manpower through casualties, such as being wounded and killed. And so for this reason, we're seeing that a lot of Ukrainian attacks are now starting to become drone-based 100%, and are not even using hardly any infantry at all. And we can see them talking about the attack and what the Russians did and what they did in response with their drones. And a lot of you keen-eyed folks may have noticed that this is actually the 3rd Brigade of the Azov, which is a famous unit inside the Ukrainian Armed Forces. And we see that the Russians actually held up a cardboard sign that said that they surrendered, and the Ukrainians actually accepted that as an official surrender, and that they are now accepting Russian prisoners that made it all the way to the Ukrainian line from their position.
They assumed the dolphin pose on the ground. The guys took them quickly.
And we see that they did take them.
They said there's a less opportunity to expose people to bullets. He doesn't want to expose them to lead. That's to cause brain damage.
Quite an extensive amount, as a matter of fact, in this particular scenario. I mean, it's a pretty impressive deal, using a drone-only force not only to clear a Russian position, but to also take prisoners as well. It's really shocking. Also, was that an RC car that had an anti-tank mine on top of it? That is an RC car chassis, man, with a TM62 on top.
That I actually had an RC car when I was younger. That actually was a pretty fast one. I think it went like 60 miles an hour. It had the exact same chassis as that right there, and they've literally taken the body off of it, and they've just left the chassis.
This is honestly genius right here. You would just never think of this stuff in a conventional setting, but that is actually pretty cool. They have an RC anti-tank mine. Like, that is actually pretty sick. I'm not going to lie. But moving on from that clip, which is pretty shocking, at least at the in reveal, we also were able to see in our location unknowns a Danish minesweeper. Never seen one of these before, but it's actually a truck. You whip the thing in reverse, deploy the flail on the back, which is made up of chains, and the chains will usually hit mines hard enough that they explode. That's generally the running theory of how this thing works. Pretty neat to see. We've never seen one before, at least in pictures. We've also been able to see the Russian casualty report over the past 24 hours as well, which has been pretty nice to see.
Oh, they got 2 Bobcats. That's very nice to see as well.
Oh, Totoro. But beyond that, we have been able to see that according to MSD Sakura, the record, 68 artillery systems is the 17th highest loss, tied with 2 other days. 227 drones is the 12th highest daily loss, and main battle tanks have returned. And we were able to see that over the past 24 hours, 1,050 Russian soldiers have been wounded and killed over the past 24 hours, along with 2 APCs, 119 supply trucks, 5 main battle tanks, rounding that number out at a clean 11,000 main battle tanks destroyed, 68 artillery pieces, 227 drones, 1 anti-aircraft system, and 2 Bobcat skid steers. All in all, it was a pretty good day, and we are absolutely happy to see that they were able to knock out a significant amount of Russian equipment over the past 24 hours, along with personnel as well. Outside of that, and in the front lines, we have also been able to see, at least within the northern fronts near to Kupiansk, that it does appear that the Russians are having a little bit of a rough time of it, at least with the Ukrainians striking them. But before we get into that, a lot of people are talking about the United States possibly striking the Russians with sanctions. And what are people thinking about that, Matthew? And what are you thinking about it as well?
All right, so we do have a poll that says top U.S. officials say severe sanctions on Russia are imminent by the end of the month, so by the end of July. So will it happen? That's the question. 53% said yes, sanctions will happen for real, while 21% said it's a 50-50 chance, and 20% said no, the U.S. will stop short of it. And this is a tricky one right here because the U.S. president said that he is in support of a sanctions bill against Russia. And it looks like some senators are planning on proposing a bill on sanctioning Russia very, very soon. And it should be finalized by the end of the month. But the only part that's got me a little bit worried is the president allegedly said that he wants to have the last right of refusal to the bill, so that way he doesn't have to put sanctions on Russia if he chooses not to. So that doesn't inspire me with much confidence, to be honest with you. So I'm going to be with the 21%. It's about a 50-50 chance, and it sounds like sanctions are getting closer to being applied. But to say it's a certainty at this point, considering the president wants to have the last say on it, I don't know. That's a little bit shaky. But Enforcer, what say you?
I have to say, in my honest opinion, it is a little shaky, but hopefully the sanctions will be real, so I'll have to go with the 53% just to try and stay positive, although sometimes, folks, trying to stay positive ends up biting you badly, so we'll have to wait and see on that one. A little bit shaky ground, but I'll say that hopefully it'll happen for real this time. But with that, we are going to be moving on into the northern news inside of Kupiansk, as we were able to hear. The Russian command HQ was destroyed by another HIMARS strike earlier today. Take a look at that M142 HIMARS, folks. Look at it and weep. The Russians could only dream of this kind of MLRS artillery. They'll never have it. They'll never have it in their life. They can want it really badly. They'll never get it. But beyond that, we were able to hear that Ukrainian rocket artillery and drone forces destroyed the command headquarters of Russia's 41st and 20th Combined Arms Armies, which is quite a significant level of headquarters, in the occupied Luhansk region, specifically in Bilevodsk and Starobilsk. They also struck the deployment sites of the Kantemyrskovaya 4th Tank Division in Svatove. So they knocked out a decent amount of headquarters over the past 24 hours, and hopefully their command efficiency will be impacted as a result of those strikes. Outside of that, near to the area of Torske, we also were able to hear that the Ukrainians, through the Signum Alpha Male unit, Skibbity Riz, Skibbity Toilet, Skibbity were able to hit and destroy a decent amount of Russian forces. Well, you see that in the drone clips right here.
This is the Stalker unit right here. They're stalking them down like prey.
Oh. Looks like they found one right there. It's a Russian dugout on the side of that hill. And there they go, right in, and out goes the smoke, and out goes the Russians as well.
Are you sure that wasn't a beaver den or something? That looked like just a random hole in the side of the river.
Oh no, that's a Russian hideout. You can see another one here that clearly has a trapdoor over it, and they hit that one as well. The Russians are getting...
Those Russians must be real slim. They must be starving or something to be able to fit in those holes.
Well, let me go pull up a beaver hole on the second screen, because that might... I don't know what the hell they could pull up, considering it has... Okay, so a beaver hole is not that large. They are a good bit smaller. This is an example of a beaver hole near to a river. It's incredibly small, because it's a beaver. But people-sized holes are going to be a lot larger. So that appeared to be a people-sized hole, because the Russians are people persons, for the large part, because they are people. But we can see here another dugout getting targeted and hit. That was the end of the clip right there. But we will be waiting to see what we get as a result from this. But before we move on, I do want to reverse back to the beaver hole. Yeah, see, Matthew, it's square. Beavers don't dig holes in perfect squares, see? You know, it's a square, you know?
Man, it just looks like a normal den of like any animal, to be honest with you, man. That doesn't even look like the entrance to a Russian like fort, in my opinion. That I don't know. Like, I'm having to stick to my guns on that one. That one looks kind of like Mother Nature might have done this one, not a Russian.
Well, how do you explain the trash around the opening? Is there like just a bear in there that's like eating Oreo packets? Like what
Raccoons.
would be in there? Well, that would be a good point. But I don't think the Ukrainians have raccoons. Let me go pull that up.
Possums.
Ukrainian raccoons. Let's go take a gander. The raccoon of Kherson. Okay, so this is like...
Well, they have a famous raccoon?
It's an American raccoon that got stolen out of a zoo. Interesting. So, reported the taking of the raccoon. Dude, the Russians treated the raccoon at Kherson as a war trophy.
Oh, they killed it?
Let's see. So apparently the raccoon has taken on a mythological meaning in Russian propaganda. Okay.
Hmm.
Uh,
They're desperate.
Let's see. In December 2022, a video was released showing Vladimir Saldo being bitten by the raccoon during an attempt to pet the animal on video. Yeah! America, baby! The damn American raccoon
man.
bit the Ruski. Dude, I love it, man. Everything in America knows that you don't trust the Russians. I love it. It's great. But apparently this thing turned into a point of Russian propaganda, but it doesn't appear that there are any... Let me go pull this up. A European raccoon. Maybe there's got to be something that's resembling of a raccoon in Europe. So here's the American raccoon. These are very cute. I like raccoons. I think they're pretty cool. But, oh, look at that one. That's a very cute raccoon. But, let me see here. Can we find... Let's see. Most of these seem to be in America. Oh, look at this. Actually, there's the Florida raccoon. Dude, you know that thing's methed out. You got the Snake River raccoon, the Texas raccoon, the Baja California raccoon. This one actually deals in Baja Blasts as its main food source. We also have the Mexican raccoon, and we also have the Upper Mississippi Valley raccoon, the Torch Key raccoon, the Matacumbe Key raccoon. We have the Tres Marias raccoon, the St. Simon. I didn't know that there was this many different species of raccoon, actually. This is insane. They're all in America, too. We have the Guadalupe raccoon. Oh, that one's actually pretty cute. Look at that.
Kind of like a lemur.
Yeah, it kind of does have, like, lemur-like traits to it. There's a million species, but apparently the raccoon is endemic to America. So if there's trash, it ain't going to be a raccoon over there. It's going to be a damn Russian. Oh, look at those.
I mean, what does everybody think in the audience about that? I don't want to run a poll on it because it's a little too trivial to run a poll, but to me, that looked like an animal den of some sort. That didn't look like a Russian dugout, because if they were squeezing through that hole to like get into a dugout, that's a little bit wild. And also, it didn't appear to have any like front door or any trap door on it or anything. It was just like a hole in the side of the river. Like, I don't know. It like seemed kind of a little sketchy to me.
Huh. Yeah, maybe. But dude, look at this raccoon. This thing is plump.
That thing is fat. Those are eating good. It must have a lot of dumpsters nearby.
This one's apparently in a zoo or something.
Oh, maybe he gets out at night or something. You know, night at the zoo.
Dude, he's grilling them at night. Oh, look at that. Dude, honestly, man, raccoons are very cute animals. Like, I think they're very... Ew, what the hell? This one is not cute.
That thing right there. That's straight out of a nightmare. That thing right there.
You wouldn't believe it. It's a Florida raccoon. It makes sense. It all adds together. The weirdest crap comes out of Florida, folks. I promise y'all. Oh, wait a minute. There's raccoon... Hold up. Oh, so apparently, raccoons are endemic to the United States and generally the Americas, or North America more so. But apparently, there was several pet raccoons that were released by members of the U.S. Air Force near the Laon-Couvron Air Base in 1966, which is in France. So apparently, there are some populations of raccoons that have escaped the United States and are living in the wild in places like Europe and Asia. This is actually a raccoon distribution map in Germany. So that's a little interesting, but there are no naturally endemic raccoon species to Europe. Let's see here. Let's see. Anything else?
That one sniffing the camera. That was a cute one right there. I like that one.
That one was cute. You know what was even cuter was this coat that they made out of the raccoons for drivers.
Yeah, that's nice right there.
That's baller, honestly. Look at that thing, dude. That thing looks like it'd keep you warm. Like, honestly, that's a pretty impressive coat. And some people are like, but you were just calling the raccoon cute. That doesn't mean that you can't turn them into coats, people. I mean, you know, like, just because an animal's cute, I mean, that thing's got to keep you warm. And I've also heard from a lot of people in the chat that apparently raccoon tastes quite good. So maybe one day we'll have a raccoon. I don't know. But anyways.
Now they had those drivers dripped out in that Versace mink. They were living it up being a driver.
Bro, they said trash panda or drip, and this man was dripping. Like, he was not having trash pandas around his house. Honestly, if y'all ever run into a raccoon pest problem, maybe y'all should consider making coats. It seems like a fairly lucrative business, at least with how dripped out this guy looks. I've never seen anyone this dripped out wearing raccoon hides in my life. This guy's got aura wearing this thing, as they say. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to move on from this clip and on into our next ones further down the line. And we have been able to hear near the Pokrovsk area that they have been hitting Russian forces. And in the Wormbusters unit, nonetheless, which is the Magyar's birds.
That scares me every time I see it.
I know. Every single time I see it, I just think of cease and desist attorneys. I don't know why. But we see the Russians here riding on their motorcycle. Oh, and they're hopping off. Oh, looks like one of them did. Oh.
Damn. That thing was carrying some. Oh, look at them. What the hell? He's running back. What the hell are they doing? He's freaking out, man. Look at him. He's freaking out like crazy. It's like a Charlie Chaplin skit. This dude's like holding his hands over his head and going, "Oh my God, oh my God."
Oh. Yeah, it was a little...
Oh, look, that's why he was freaking out. It looks like the carburetor wasn't working.
Yeah, it kind of did. We can also see them setting up some drone nets as well. And apparently playing some sort of like Squid Game music. Also, by the way, they are actually saving a deer, I forgot to mention, out of that net. And off goes the deer, off into the wild.
Someone said he was trying to get his phone. Yeah, I think he left his phone back there in that sidecar. He was desperate, though. You know how people are addicted to their phones these days. Can't survive a minute without it. He was desperate to get that phone out of there.
Oh, yeah. You know, he was... Dude, honestly, man, it looks like he just got so desperate he just yanked the whole backpack out of the sidecar trying to get it. But anyways, with that, we are going to be moving on from this clip from the 68th Jaegers near to Pokrovsk. And we are going to be moving on down into Mykolaiv. Oh, actually, we already covered the Chinese nationals getting arrested. And as a matter of fact, folks, I just realized that was the end of the news right there in Pokrovsk. We actually do not have a speech from Zelensky tonight, so that means that we're going to be moving into the question segment, where we get to talk to each and every one of y'all. And so, without further ado, I gotta say that it's time for us to get on into the chit-chat with all of y'all. We absolutely enjoy getting to chit-chat with y'all. It's a great fun. It's a great joy. And we will be making sure to get to talk to each and every one of y'all, hopefully here in this question segment. So with that, Matthew, what do we got? What do we got?
I got to tell you what, that was whiplash, changing segments on that one right there. No speech. Also, that was an abrupt into the news, and that was a shock. So I'm in shock as much as the guy trying to get his phone out of a motorcycle sidecar on the front lines of Ukraine. So anyways, jumping right into our questions. We are fresh out of polls, and jumping into our first super chat. This one goes to Paul Liam, who puts in a very generous $30 donation. And thank you very much, Paul, for that support. He said, what about U.S. subs to the Red Sea?
U.S. subs to the Red Sea would provide no real value with the current situation we're seeing there at the moment. Submarines cannot provide air defense. They do not have any real ability to do that. They do not carry a loadout of any kind of ground-to-air missiles or surface-to-air missiles. So submarines would pose really no intrinsic value in the current situation we're seeing in the southern Red Sea. But I do thank you for the support, and I do thank you for asking that question. No one's asked it so far, so it's a great question because it's the first of its kind. But as far as the answer, submarines would really serve no value at the moment in the southern Red Sea. And so with that, a big thanks to you once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, so our next one here is going to go to none other than Coleslaw, who puts in a 20. And thank you, Coleslaw, as well, for that generous support. And he said, if Iran were to acquire the jets, would it be beneficial or detrimental to the Air Force, considering the Chinese jets, they are not renowned for their performance? And thank you for providing the top-notch news.
Thank you for enjoying our top-notch news. As far as J-10s go, it's really hard to say how good they perform, because the only time we've ever seen them in action was against the Indians, and I think we can all kind of agree that they're not really the best at flying planes. They crashed every one of every type, and then the Chinese went around after that and acted like it was the biggest victory in the world, and we're like, oh my god, the J-10's the greatest. It's like, no, it's not. It's probably not. I'd still doubt it. It's just that the Pakistanis kind of knew how to fly without crashing, and the Indians didn't. That was kind of the difference between the two. So I would generally say that it probably would end up being net neutral for the Indians, or more so the Iranians if they got them, because the Iranians are not going to be well trained on them, and the aircraft probably isn't even that good in the first place. So they're pretty much going to be in the same situation they're with say, the F-14s, in that these aircraft wouldn't even take off in a wartime scenario. And not only that, they probably wouldn't even really know how to fly them or operate them all too well, because they really don't know how to fly or operate any of their other aircraft, because their pilots get practically no training and flight hours on a yearly basis. So With that, I hope that does address it the best I can. I do thank you for support, but I'm thinking that the J-10 would have really no impact on Rand's air power abilities, at least in my opinion. And I could be wrong. But with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. And with that, we are on to the next one.
Also, by the way, did you hear that India apparently crashed another jet just like 18 hours ago or something? Did you hear that?
Yes, I did. I did hear about that. I forgot what type it was, though, but I did hear about it.
It was a, let's see here. They said Indian Air Force jet. It was in Banudu Village, Churu District, Rajasthan. Let's see here. I do have the video of it right here if you want to show that video here on the stream real quick.
Yeah.
It was, I'm trying to find what the jet was. Like, they're not really naming the jet right off the bat. It appears to be a Jaguar JS-159 was what crashed, but we do have that video on the Twitter page if you want to show them to them.
Oh, a Sepcat Jaguar. I know that one. I actually do know that one.
Can y'all believe they crashed another jet? Like, they're not even in a war right now and they're crashing jets. I mean, that's bad. I mean, that's really bad. The Indian Air Force might be the worst in the world.
They crashed this one.
Yeah, and I don't know how much they cost, but, you know, all jets are expensive, so that's probably a sizable little loss right there.
Man, they're going to come up and go, do you know how much it costs? Like, you know what I'm imitating. That
Yeah.
like voice impersonation. It was hilarious, honestly, to me. But anyways, here's the clip. Who the hell is this behind the microphone? Is this Lukashenko in India? Like, why in the world does he sound just like Lukashenko? He's like, "Kada-da-da," you know, it's like he sounds like he's like goofy, honestly.
Rumor has it this was the brother of the pilot, apparently. Also, I think the pilot did live, I believe. Well, no, I take that back. The pilot apparently is reportedly dead, according to the reports, so no, he did not make it.
Hold up, I gotta listen to Lukashenko at the beginning of this clip again. I swear this is Lukashenko. That is literally Lukashenko, dude. If I pull up an audio clip of Lukashenko talking, let me get Lukashenko talking. Let me just pull that up really quickly and get y'all a clip of that. Oh, let's see here. Here we go. Here, so... Oh, dang, let's see here. Can I get a long period? Here we go. This is it. I'm not going to show the clip. I'm just going to play the audio, but listen to it. I'm going to play this guy again. It's literally Lukashenko. It's literally him. Like, whoever that was, they had the same voice behind the microphone because they just played a small snippet of him, small snippet of Lukashenko. Literally dead on match. But let's see here. Let's look at the rest of what we got here.
Oh, the whole town's out here, too.
Oh, the whole township's out here.
छोटा-छोटा टुकड़ा है बाकी कोई बड़ी चीज तो एक महीने दिख रही है
I think he said, I can barely, like, understand their language because I'm not very familiar with it, but I think he said something like, he was stupid, he shouldn't have crashed, he should have pulled up.
Man, I think this guy was saying, wow, this is going to make a great episode of Air Disasters. I think that's what he was saying. Dude, how many people are out here? This is like the biggest thing that's happened in town, apparently. Like, everyone's out here.
So much for having, like, security around the crash site. I mean, these are people just standing around just staring into the sky, like, literally.
Dude, like, in a second, dude, Lukashenko's about to come back out here and go, you know, something like that's like, you're gonna be like, oh, bro, he's here again. What? Who was out there with a flute? Did you hear that? Willy Wonka was calling up an Oompa Loompa somewhere with that. Like, listen to that. Who the hell's playing a flute in the middle of this?
That's a ringtone, I think.
Oh, dude, it literally sounded like Willy Wonka's little flute thing that he would play to call up the Oompa Loompas. Like, this whole thing, honestly, bro, is a meme, like, at this point. Like, you got Lukashenko in one clip, you got the flute and the ringtone. Like, this whole thing's is a joke. But that's the end of that clip. And then moving on from that and into our last one, we did get to see on the debris that at least the builder's panel says that this is a Sepcat Jaguar. So quite clearly, this aircraft. Let me go see if I can actually show y'all an Indian Air Force Sepcat Jaguar. So let's see here if they have any pictures of them. Let's see here. Oh, here we go. Oh, dang it. Let me go. Here we go. So here we are. There are the Indian Air Force Sepcat Jaguars right there. This is a fairly old picture, it appears, but still, nonetheless, it is a Sepcat Jaguar. So the Indians do have them. They did lose one. I don't know how the Indian Air Force does it, but they magically can lose aircraft like no other. So far, they've been able to lose one of every type of aircraft in the Indian Air Force so far, just to make sure to hit all the bases. One Rafale, one Su-30 MKI, one MiG-29, and now one Sepcat Jaguar. I also heard that apparently they lost an Mi-8 at some point recently as well. So not only are they losing most of their aircraft, they're also losing a helicopter here and there too. Honestly, I feel like one thing that needs to be done is they need to ground the entire Indian Air Force until they learn to fly, and then they can end up flying. Or as Lukashenko would say, ситуация это нет нормально, российский аэрофлот, something like that. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and it is time for us to move on into the next questions. But still, what an absolute shame. But beyond that, as far, well, actually, really quickly getting back to the whole, will the J-10s have an impact on Iran, to round out that question? It really won't, because once again, the only situation where we saw the J-10s did well was against an Air Force that has a propensity for crashing planes, just like it's a pastime or a hobby or something. So generally, I'm thinking that the J-10 probably isn't that good when put up to scrutiny, because they were going up against like the easiest Air Force to beat so far in modern history. So I do thank you for support. I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
They're losing so many jets, they're going to get tired of losing. Literally. They're losing stuff that they can't even keep track of what they're losing at this point. It's like they lose the Jaguar today or yesterday or something like that. I think like 15 hours ago. Then it's like, oh, also, like they also lost an Mi-8 somewhere in the mix. Like there was also just a complete entire helicopter that happened to get lost in the meantime. We'll just pretend like we don't see that. Yeah, that's just crazy, honestly. Like, I don't even understand how they lose that many aircraft in a short period of time like that, especially not in a war either. It's like, that's really bad. That explains why they were losing them left and right. They were dropping out of the sky like flies during the war with Pakistan. So it's crazy that India has such a bad Air Force like that, and Pakistan's Air Force looks competent compared to the Indian Air Force. It's just, I don't even understand that. But moving on to our next super chat here. This one goes to Thomas Asada Grant. He puts in a $15 donation, and thank you very much, Thomas, for that support. And also, while we're at it, big shout out to Dade Carnes, also known as Raid, for putting in a 10 as well. And we appreciate you both, Thomas and Dade, for that support. And Enforcer, what say you?
I gotta thank both of y'all for the support. Y'all didn't throw in comments, but y'all helped this channel to keep rolling daily, and we thank y'all massively for y'all's support. And so with that, we're on to the next one.
And we also have a 10 from Wantan Quadruple 8. And Wantan said, funny news for the day. Let's see, POTUS to the president of Liberia. He said, you speak very good English. Where did you learn it? And English is the official language of Liberia.
I heard about that earlier. I was like, yeah, but honestly, it's not like people are always like, oh man, what an idiot. But like a lot of presidents don't really know squat about most other countries. Like for example, going through a couple of them, George H.W. Bush didn't know not to throw up in the Japanese prime minister's lap. That was something he generally didn't know was culturally unaccepted in Japan. In America, that's generally fine. You can throw up in everyone's laps if you didn't know. But you can't do that in Japan. Generally considered rude. Another thing is like George Bush, like you could come up with 500 of them for him. Let's see, who was another person who had a gaffe? Oh yeah, Jimmy Carter went to Poland. If y'all didn't know, Jimmy Carter actually tried to speak speech in Polish at one point. Yeah, I don't think he was the president yet, but he made a speech in Poland, and he ended up speaking a sentence wrongly. So he was supposed to say that I have a great love in my heart for the Polish people, and I connect with y'all. And he misspoke, and it came out as I'm lusting for Poles, and I'm here to stay. Is pretty much what he said. It ended up going over badly. Like it wasn't really that. They had to clear it up with an official translator and everything, but that was not really a good scenario. Like stuff like that happens. Pretty funny goof though, I will say. But whenever you hear of a goof like that, you're like, oh god, like it's like, man, like whenever anyone goofs, it's just bad. Like, there's been goofs by everyone in the world. But one of the craziest ones, this is one that I just don't understand. Australia actually lost their prime minister back in. Australia's got weird stuff that happens with their prime ministers. One of them shit themselves in McDonald's. Not kidding, not making it up. It happened. It was like in, I think, the 90s. And everyone just made fun of the guy until he eventually got ousted as prime minister. They're like, he's the guy who crapped himself in McDonald's. And then there's another one. He went swimming at a beach. He just got sucked out to sea in a riptide, was never found again. They didn't really launch like a search operation for the guy. It was kind of like a half-hearted, we didn't find him. And then they just got a new prime minister. So, interesting stuff happens around the world all the time. But let's see, what would be another one? Oh, man, you remember that time that Kim Jong-un and Putin met together and they had like that little dinner and they did like the cheers with the champagne, and then neither of them would drink it because they thought the other guy had it poisoned, and then they both put him down. There's all kinds of goofy stuff that happens in diplomacy. But this one, that one was a pretty funny one. I'm not gonna lie. Asking a country whose official language is English, wow, your English is really good. Where'd you learn it? Honestly, I actually ran into a situation like that as well. But go ahead, Matthew. What were you going to say?
Do you remember when the current president, who's currently the president right now of the United States, he went to North Korea and was sitting across from Kim Jong-un, and he said something to the effect of, some of us are a little bit on the heavy side, some of us are unfortunately not exactly what you call athletic, and he like stared at Kim Jong-un for a second, and Kim Jong-un just stared at the camera like it was an Office episode or something.
Bro, I remember that now. Dude, I remember that, dude, because he sat there and looked at that camera. He literally looked to the camera, and the camera panned to him like it was sort of like a sitcom. Like, it was ridiculous. But one thing that was funny was the George Bush in the shoe incident. Where that guy threw his shoes at George Bush, and George Bush dodged the first one and came back up smiling, and then he threw the second one and he dodged that one too. And the whole time the Secret Service was nowhere to be found. Like, he was just out there battling for his life against the shoe assault, and the Secret Service was nowhere to be found. That was just ridiculous. But that one with North Korea, that one was hilarious. Let's see, what would be another one? I'm trying to think of some. Let's see here. There's got to be some that I'm missing here from recent, like from the last administration, the one before both of them. Let's rake our brains, man. There's got to be one that's funny.
I remember back in the day, I think it was like back in 2007 or 2006. I can't remember which one it was. I remember everybody was getting on George Bush real bad because he walked up at the time it was the British Prime Minister, Blair. He walked up and said, "Yo, Blair," and was like talking to him like he was like in like college or something like that, and everybody went berserk. It's not really a funny one necessarily, but it was like one of those moments everybody's like, "What the hell?" It's like you're not walking up to him in like a school or something. You're walking up to him and discussing a really sensitive topic in the Middle East, so it's a little bit out of touch. But honestly, there's not too many funny ones. Usually, it's not that funny when they mess up something in foreign policy. To be honest, except for like a few things, like the unfortunate incident of the guy throwing up in the lap. That was not exactly a good one. But I don't know. I just can't think of anything off the top of my head.
I saw one. Now watch this drive. Oh, that's one of my favorites. We actually quote that one. Like someone asked Bush a question, he fumbled it, and then he said, "Now watch this drive." He slammed it. Like, he actually slammed the ball. Like, it was a really good hit. But beyond that one's hilarious to me for some reason. But also the one about they want what was it, Matthew? We want women and gynecologists to have stronger relationships or something. It was some weird thing like that. Like,
we want bees and birds to coexist peacefully together.
No,
or something
man
like that,
and
or
fish, man and fish. Yeah, and then what was it?
coexist.
What was another one that was funny? Let's see. Oh yeah, he said we want you to be able to work hard and make good money to put food on your family. The man put food
And also,
on
the Ayatollah never rests about finding ways to hurt Americans,
And
and
neither
neither
do
do
we.
we. Excuse me. I mean, they don't.
Shame on, fool me once, shame on you. Fool me twice. Look, you fool me once, you can't fool me again. Like, man, honestly,
that guy
he
had
was
so
funny.
many gaffes. Like, that guy was a gaff machine, but at the same time, though, he was lethal, though, in private. That guy was lethal as hell. He'd make a decision with decisiveness like you'd never believe. But in public, though, was a complete gaff machine. Like, it was really wild.
Yeah, but but that's a crazy thing. The guy was terrible. Apparently, well, he wasn't terrible. Apparently, he was quite clearly terrible at public speaking of any kind. But everyone says, like, if you ever talk to anyone out there, like even Putin said, George Bush was a guy to be contended with. Like he was actually dangerous. And apparently Putin was actually scared of Bush. Interestingly enough, so Bush was a totally different person when he wasn't having to speak in public. Apparently, he was a lean, mean killing machine behind the closed doors. So a little bit interesting with that. You would never think that. Kind of like how, kind of like how Carter, unfortunately, rest in peace. Carter passed away recently, I think earlier this year. But he was a terrible president. I think most people agree on that. But he was a really, really nice guy. Probably one of the most upstanding guys that we've had as president recently. He did a lot of things for the poor, the needy, all those sorts of things. Great guy, but didn't really shape up to be a great president. But let's see. Someone said, didn't Bush Sr. No, that was Gerald Ford who fell down the stairs from Air Force One. Like he fell from the top. Remember that, Matthew? It was like a damn Family Guy skit, the way the guy fell down the stairs.
I think I do recall that. Those stairs in Air Force One had been like the bane of a
Dangerous.
lot of presidents' existence, honestly. Like, I think every president in like their entire term has at least tripped on the Air Force One stairs at least once. Usually, the best case scenario is they trip going up the stairs. That's the best case scenario because they just fall forward into the next step. The worst case, though, if they fall going down the stairs and they break their neck or something, that's like, that's bad. I think that sometimes they'll pull out like the little stairs and they'll like bring them out on the little stairs and stuff like that if they're worried they're going to fall or something. That hasn't really happened until like recently, but typically they walk down the big stairs.
Oh, I got a good one, man. I don't know if y'all have ever heard this one before. This is in the Reagan Presidential Library. This one's really funny. But when the U.S. went into Grenada, there was actually a British consulate there, and they ended up getting roughed up by the U.S. forces that were in Grenada. And apparently the British were trying to get them out when it happened. So Reagan called up Thatcher on the phone. It's in the presidential library. It's a recording on YouTube if you want to pull it up. And he sat there and he got on the phone. I'm so sorry. I'm very sorry about this. This was a huge incident. It hit the press. It was blowing up because everyone was like, dang, the U.S. military just roughed up these British diplomats in Grenada. And he got on the phone. I'm so sorry. I'm terrible. Like it was actually hilarious. That sort of thing. But honestly, man, the funnier phone call was the one that JFK made to the I think it was the Secretary of the Air Force. Remember that one, Matthew? I want that sent back to Jordan Mosh. He was going off about like the furniture that was because because to speak a little bit about that, Jacqueline was pregnant at the time, and the Air Force was actually told to prepare. I think it was like a maternity room or something like that for her to be ready to have the baby. And they actually got some pretty nice furniture from a furniture store that was well known at the time called Jordan Marsh, which is up there in the New England area to where this base was near. And they got some really nice furniture. I mean, it cost $600 back in the day, and $600 back in the 60s for all of y'all who were around back then was a lot of money. So the press was allowed into the room. And they were all like, oh my God, this is like really opulent. So it hit the papers and people were like, what the hell? And Kennedy was a very frugal person as far as government spending went. He wasn't really a big fan of spending a lot or making the office of the president opulent. So it enraged him. And also it was really bad in the press too. So he got up on the phone and he just went off on the Secretary of the Air Force. He was just going off on the guy for minutes. And at the end of the phone call, the Secretary of the Air Force was like, oh, well, obviously, sir, this wasn't a great thing. And Kennedy said, well, obviously, this is just an F-up. And then he hung up the phone on him. It was the end of the call. It was a crazy thing, though. It was actually hilarious.
Now, a president that wasn't exactly funny, but was absolutely bizarre, like in private. The most bizarre president we've ever probably had in private was Lyndon B. Johnson. Lyndon B. Johnson, LBJ, was honestly a bit of a creep in private. And also, he had a weird thing about bragging about certain things that are not appropriate, especially to aides and other people in the White House. LBJ had a bit of a problem. He would go around and he would say this term called jumbo. And he was going around saying this to aides in the White House. He said to journalists. He would literally pull up in the White House bathroom. He would go into the bathroom and he would ask people a very odd question in context and would say, "Have you ever seen anything like this?"
You've got
to the people that were standing in the bathroom and say,
You've got to add
Say
more
what?
context, man, to this because it's worse. It's funnier actually, and worse too when you give the full context. You got to tell them what Jumbo was, like not exactly what it was, but something close for people to get the
Oh, I
gist.
mean, you can deduce what I'm talking about. He was in the bathroom, at the urinal and stuff, and he was turning to people in the bathroom talking about, "Have you ever seen anything like this? That's Jumbo in the
Dude,
bathroom."
he wasn't just doing it in the bathroom. He did it in like situation room meetings. He'd be like, "Mr. President, what are we gonna do in Vietnam?" And you just hear, "Shh, look at it. It's the biggest you've ever seen." Like it's like, what the hell? It's like this guy had an issue. But beyond that, one other thing that's a little bit interesting about Lyndon B. Johnson, you can actually hear like kind of how weird he was. He wasn't kind of weird. He was quite weird by my definition, but you can hear how weird he was because he called up a tailor. You remember the famous tailor call because he was about to attend the funeral of actually he was attending the funeral of J. Edgar Hoover that day and he was trying to get some new pants tailored. And he was sitting there, he was like, I need you to add an inch or two of ballroom down there for my balls because they cut me down there. I was like, this guy is just and then he was like burping in the phone call. Like he was like honestly as far as like weirdos went, I think Johnson was probably one of the weirdest people out there, honestly. Like he was
They,
he
they
was a weird
say
guy.
they say in his doc or like in his biography, like the guy, I think one of his biographies, they said that he would do the thing in the bathrooms where he would tell people like, take a look, have you ever seen like this before? That's Jumbo, and then he would go and like try to go urinate on the ground outside and say, I'm the president now, I can do whatever I want. Watch this, and he would go like you'll go pee outside or something like whenever he felt like it, and also that thing you're talking about in the meetings too, like this. I guess randomly, I guess he just felt like, now's the time. He would like literally say in the middle of like some serious talk, like, "Hey, take a look at this," and everybody would look over to their horror as the fellow was doing something he probably shouldn't be doing. He was pulling a tubing before it was popular.
Man. Bro, dude, imagine if he ever met with Khrushchev. Now, your nuclear weapons might be big, but you know what's bigger? It's like, oh no! It's like, bro, we're about to get nuked. But man, I mean, honestly, that guy was whack. A guy who was actually interesting to listen to on phone calls was Nixon. He was very interesting to listen to his phone recordings. Because if y'all don't know, folks, while we don't talk about politics, I'll speak about it neutrally and just point out some funny stuff about everyone. But Nixon's phone calls were actually pretty interesting if y'all ever give them a listen. Because y'all wouldn't believe this. This is something that was crazy to me. Is that in one of the phone calls, he was like, excuse me, miss, I need you to get me to that new senator from Delaware. I don't know his name, but I need you to get him to me because I heard that his family just died in a terrible car crash, and I want to give him my condolences. And so they got him on the phone, and the guy on the phone said, what do you need, Mr. President? He said, Senator Biden, I want to tell you that I'm very sorry about hearing your family pass away. And this was way back when Nixon was president, and he was actually calling up Biden. If y'all didn't know, his whole family actually got killed back in the 60s, late 60s, I believe, in a car crash. And it was a terrible thing. Everyone was consoling him at the time from every party time. They're very sorry that it happened. It was a tragedy. It was a terrible tragedy. He got blindsided, I think, in an intersection. Whole family got wiped out, except for I think one person. I think one of his children survived through that car crash, I believe. But that's actually why, if y'all don't know later, interesting fact about Biden in those earlier years, he was known as Railroad Biden, Railroad Joe, because he refused after that to take a car. He would always ride the train into Washington from Delaware. Terrible thing, and that's generally why he was actually a major proponent when he was president of the American railroads, because he was a heavy user of it, actually, even before he became the vice president and the president. So a little bit interesting with that, actually. But that was weird to hear. And then another interesting call he actually had. He had a call with a fella who would end up becoming a senator. I think he's a senator still to this day. But he would end up calling him. He was in New York at the delegation for the UN at the time for the United States, and he was calling up and he was talking about democracy. He's like, democracies, they fail everywhere. They fail in East Asia. I mean, hell, even these people, they have a hard time with it. And he was talking about all that. So, he's talking about his opinion on this stuff, and he was like, well, I was about to write up this speech here, and I was just wanting to run this by you. What do you think of this? And he would read off a part of his speech, and the other guy would be like, well, yeah, you might want to say this because this will convey it more so this. And it was really interesting because what was really interesting about it, just to tell you a little bit about it, the guy he was talking to was a Democrat, he was a Republican. They were working together to actually get the speech put together for a national address. I was like, that's, it's a completely different time in politics. You wouldn't really hear about that stuff too much these days. You might hear about people working to co-sponsor a bill together, but you wouldn't ever hear of them helping out to write speeches together. So it was a really interesting time. But, I would have to say to y'all that it's really interesting to look into all that sort of stuff, the phone calls, the recordings, the writings, those sorts of things. It's a really interesting sort of a thing because it's just interesting to listen to them as people.
Now, there's also some other interesting facts I've learned about recently about the recent presidents. Did you know that Abraham Lincoln, before he became the president, he was actually like a pretty damn good wrestler, actually. He was considered an elite wrestler of his time. I think he won like several hundred wrestling matches. He was killing it like in wrestling. I think he only lost one time out of all of his times that he was wrestling. He was even inducted into the Wrestling Hall of Fame, actually, and told people he dared anybody to wrestle him, and apparently he could beat pretty much anybody that he ran across. And Abe Lincoln was not exactly what you'd call a built guy. Like, he was not very built, but he could wrestle pretty damn good, actually.
The guy was a giant, though. He was 6'6".
Yeah, he was tall, but he wasn't like, the alpha male of like modern day, the guys that out there on steroids and stuff like that. He wasn't like that, but he was decently muscular though, kind of strong in that way. Also, another interesting fact, Gerald Ford, another president, he was actually a male model before he was the president, actually. He actually modeled like in some big magazines and stuff, like I think Cosmopolitan was one of them. And I think he studied law. He turned down being a football player. And the big part was, though, he was a model at one point. That was kind of wild. You might even be able to find photos of him modeling before he was the president, actually, if you pull up Gerald Ford modeling pictures.
Well, yeah, let me go pull that up really quickly. Gerald, he's kind of a president you don't really hear a lot about in modern history, beyond the carrier being named after him. But let's see here. Let's see. Actually, he was a pretty handsome fella back when he was younger, and he had a full head of hair. There he is, right there.
Yeah, it doesn't look like they have any modeling. Like, pull up modeling, like, Cosmopolitan behind it or something like that. These aren't really like modeling
this
pictures.
Right here? I think it's him.
Is that it? Yeah, I guess him. So. That's like the really old version of that magazine right there. But yeah, that's kind of wild. Like that these presidents were doing stuff like that before they became the president. It's kind of wild. Like a lot of people think older presidents, like presidents from past generations and stuff, they believe that they were just like random people that just happened to become the president, and that now in the modern day we're in some type of period where only celebrities become presidents. That's not true at all. Not even close.
Well, what's actually interesting? I'm trying to see if I can find something for y'all about Jimmy Carter. Jimmy Carter actually was, and generally is, still to this day considered one of the leading nuclear scientists that we had in America. As a matter of fact, he had such a grasp on nuclear science and technology that when the 3 Mile Island incident happened, they didn't call him up to tell him it happened. They called him to ask him what they should do. At 3 Mile Island, which is a really interesting sort of a thing. He was actually a huge forefront in maritime nuclear technology for the U.S. So when he became president, he carried that knowledge with him. It's a really cool fact about Jimmy Carter. Beyond him, being what everyone knows, which is the governor of Georgia, the peanut farmer guy. That's what most people would know Carter for. But he was actually one of the head honchos of nuclear science in this country for his time. Really cool fact about him.
He also fought off a swamp rabbit one time as well. Like there was an infamous time when he was apparently fishing in Georgia, and he was in his like little like robe, not a rowboat, but like a fishing boat, and some like wild swamp rabbit or something like that tried to attack him or something, and he had to go and like, I don't know if he killed the rabbit or did something with it or whatever, but he fought it off, and the media got a hold of it and made a huge like mockery out of him for fighting off the swamp rabbit while he was fishing.
Huh. Honestly, it's like, why in the hell does the media care? It's like, let the man mind his business. It's like if someone's off doing something on their own, I don't know what the media has with.
And they were desperate for some dirt.
Yeah, people are always desperate for dirt. It's always the case. But let's see. I saw someone say Jimmy Carter was incredibly smart. Yeah, that's the thing. Jimmy Carter was a great guy, incredibly smart, but I think a lot of people would agree with me, like, no matter who they are. He wasn't a good president. Like, everyone, that's why he only served one term. He wasn't really popular enough to survive a second term, so he ended up getting voted out. But you know, it's a little unfortunate with that. Sometimes a nice person doesn't really make out to be a great president. It's an unfortunate thing about it. But also someone said, "What the hell is a swamp rabbit?" Like honestly, that's my
It's just
question.
a wild. It's just a wild rabbit that lives in the swamp. They call him a swamp rabbit. I mean, it's technically like that's not like the name of the animal, like per se. It's just like a nickname for it. Like in Georgia, I think they call them swamp rabbits. But it's just a wild rabbit that just happens to live in a swamp. So that's all it is.
Oh, it's these wiry looking rabbits.
Yeah, it's just a wild rabbit.
These look a little different than the normal rabbit, you know, like that you
He
see
fought
around.
one of these off. Like he actually successfully fought one of these back, like Jimmy Carter. Very brave dude.
Very brave, I will say. To fight a rabbit, you've got to have a lot of bravery, like a lot of it. You know, these things are scary. If you ever see Monty Python and the Holy Grail, or this little bastard right here, they're scary looking. Look at that. It looks like it's ready to pounce. Like that thing could eat your neck or something like that. You know, like go for your jugular or something like that. But still, ew.
Oh man, that's that rabbit off that movie or off that book. You know what I'm talking about?
I don't like. I actually
That child book that's like the little rabbit or whatever is getting in some trouble or something. I don't know. You know, it's that childhood book with the rabbit, Peter Rabbit or something.
I've never heard of that. Oh, Peter Rabbit. Yeah, I have heard of Peter.
I
I
don't
don't
say
think.
you've heard of that.
I think this is more like a guinea pig than a rabbit.
Maybe so. This is that thing they test stuff on.
That thing they test stuff on, bro.
That's
Honestly,
that thing that fella at the at the NHS was testing stuff on, probably.
dude, this thing said, "Who me?" Like,
So, you want a virus?
bro, this thing just got told, "Okay, we're gonna test out sarin gas on you." And he's like, "Oh man," like it's like, bro, it's like rip. But beyond that, I'd have to say. That was one hell of a picture. But what are some other cool facts that we could bring up to y'all? Because it actually looks like a lot of people are enjoying this little section of just cool facts about people in the government.
More president facts you're asking for, basically?
Hell, honestly, we could extend it to really anyone in government. You know, like a senator, a representative, presidents. Presidents are usually pretty popular though, like as far as knowing facts and info about them.
Well, the first president who kind of popularized ice cream to a certain extent. You know which president that was?
Oh, let's see. Would have been someone at the beginning of the 1900s. Would have been Taft.
Oh yeah. Oh no. Why'd you pick Taft just because he was large?
Well, he's a heavier set guy. I mean, you know, he's got to be liking food somewhere.
No, it wasn't Taft. Taft was the one. He got stuck in the bathtub. He got wedged in there, so they had to install a custom tub so that way he didn't get stuck and drown in there. But
Still there to this day.
that wasn't Taft. It was Thomas Jefferson. Because Thomas Jefferson he really liked French food a lot. And he was one of the first presidents to get ice cream served in the White House when anybody in the U.S. had barely even heard of ice cream yet. Like hardly anybody knew about it in the U.S. But Thomas Jefferson was apparently Gucci. He wanted the French food and he wanted the ice cream, and he got it in there. And also, he spent he was big into wine too, like imported wine from Europe. He imported I think $4,000 in that time's money of wine from Europe just so he could drink it in the White House and have it kind of exclusively to himself. It's kind of wild.
Interesting. Very interesting. I would, another. Yeah. What is another interesting fact that you could share with us, Matthew? Also, Matthew, you misled me. I said it had to have been from the beginning of the 1900s. I said, yeah, you're close. Thomas Jefferson was alive in the end of the 1700s, the beginning of the 1800s. You absolutely led me into being ambushed on that. You were like, you're cold. You're like, yeah, you're actually close by 140 years. It's like, bro, it's like, hey, what other facts do we have?
So another one off the top of my head, Calvin Coolidge, another president, he had a pet raccoon that he named Rebecca. Rebecca was the pet raccoon that Coolidge had. He kept it around the White House. And he had it for a companion. So it was like a legit pet. He wasn't keeping it for other reasons. He just simply had it as a pet. And he'd walk around the White House on a leash. Like he'd put this raccoon on a leash. He'd walk the thing around the White House, around just the whole perimeter of the White House. He just walked this raccoon around, which is kind of crazy. I'm not sure if there's any pictures of it. There might be some pictures if you pull it up of Calvin Coolidge and the raccoon, Rebecca walking around the White House. But yeah, that was the weirdest pet. One of the weirdest pets the president has ever had.
Calvin Coolidge and raccoon. Bro, they actually have it. They actually have pictures of this raccoon.
Hey, sure. Is that a fake picture? That looks fake. That's a real picture right there.
This one's real. But that
thing is crazy looking.
bro, that thing looks like it just saw someone that it wants to kill. Like this thing. Also, man, they put like a choker on this thing. Look at it. It's like a steel choker with a steel chain. Bro, this thing was
Jeez,
feral.
man, that's crazy.
This thing was feral, honestly. Look at this. Oh, it does look cute there, though. It kind of
It
looks
must have
like Mr.
been well
Corgi
behaved because
sneezing.
everybody's holding it. It's no problem at all.
Yeah, it must have liked being petted and stuff. We see everyone gathering around it like it's a freak show attraction, though. Like, look, everyone's making a perimeter around it, gathering around, looking at the thing. But still, pretty cool that a president had a pet raccoon. I think raccoons are cute. But anyways, let's see. What is another interesting fact that we could share with everyone, Matthew? Another interesting one.
Let me think real quick. Honestly, I've run out of like ones that I know off the top of my head, so I'm having to do some looking now to find some more. So let's see. Woodrow Wilson, here's another president. He had a flock of sheep on the White House lawn, and this was during World War One. Wilson would let the sheep graze over the White House lawn to save on lawn maintenance because his explanation for letting this happen was he didn't want to pay for the White House grounds to be kept up by the groundskeepers, so he'd bring in the sheep to go and fix the lawn up and keep it all maintained. And then he would auction off the wool from those sheep for the war effort during World War One to raise money. And he had a bunch of sheep that were on the lawn that would actually eat tobacco, or actually chew on chewing tobacco even in the yard, and would charge it to staff too. So that was a pretty crazy one.
Bruh. Blood was out there having sheep chewing on Copenhagen while they mow the lawn. Like, bro, real southern of them right there, like chewing on Copenhagen and doing the lawn. Very, very southern thing. That's interesting though. I was trying to look, man, because if you remember, there was a fence, or at least a remnant of a fence, like a wood one that existed that kept the sheep in, so that way they wouldn't just wander out through the rest of Washington. But I couldn't find them. Like, I couldn't find the fence down there, at least.
Interesting. Also, by the way, I got another one for you. What's the only president in history that's, well, not the only president in history. What's a president in history that's gotten a speeding ticket the weirdest way possible?
Oh, jeez. I wouldn't actually know.
Civil War era guy.
Civil War era. Like, he was alive during then, or he was the president then?
Ulysses S. Grant. He got a speeding ticket on a horse. He actually did get a speeding ticket. He apparently rode his horse too fast through D.C. back when they had speeding actual speed limits for riding your horse through D.C. Like, believe it or not, they actually had speed limits for that. You couldn't ride your horse faster than a certain speed. I'm not sure how they gauged it, but there was a technical speed limit where you couldn't go so fast. He got a ticket from the D.C. Police and was fined $20 by a police officer for riding the horse too fast. He paid the fine to the officer on the spot, which definitely wouldn't be allowed today whatsoever. You can't pay an officer on the spot. That's like a bribe, basically. But he paid the officer on the spot, and he got the ticket basically dismissed on the spot, and they just walked off, and that was the end of it.
Huh, that's wild. Did you know that the first automobile ticket, like a speeding ticket ever issued to an automobile, was issued for someone going 8 miles an hour in a 3 mile an hour zone?
8 mile an hour and a 3 mile an hour. Now that's ridiculous. That's government overreach.
Yeah, it really was, wasn't it? But it's crazy to think that they had speed limits back then like that, like 3 miles an hour. Like, it's like, I guess if you were speed walking, you were in violation of the speed limit. I don't know. Like, it's a little bit weird thinking about that. But there's another interesting fact, by the way, about the White House that y'all may not know, is that the White House is not the White House. Like, I'll explain really quickly. The outside is the White House, like the structural walls. But everything inside these rooms, they're not real. They are not the original rooms. The original rooms were burnt in the actual White House building in 1814 by the British. They were then rebuilt afterwards, and those would end up being the rooms in the White House until the Eisenhower administration, because Eisenhower came in, and while he was there, I forgot what it was, but I think it was the leg of a grand piano that ended up literally falling through the floor because the wood was that rotten inside the White House. It fell through the floor, and the leg of the piano was sticking out of the roof in one of these rooms. And so Eisenhower said, this isn't even livable. Like, this building is about to collapse. This is dangerous. So they went and had the entire White House gutted. I'll actually show you all that. White House gutted. They had the entire thing gutted. And then they went and rebuilt all of the rooms from the ground up. So really the interior of the White House doesn't go back to the beginning of the country. It's only as old as about the 1950s. So it's not that old, actually. It's quite new, except for the exterior of the building, which is still original to its 1798 construction. Or I believe, yeah, 1798 construction. I think it was opened in 1802. And so, you know, a little bit interesting with that. Also, that is a ceiling, not a roof. But beyond that, it's a really interesting sort of a fact about the White House, because when people these days, like presidents, talk about, you know, it's crazy to walk into a room like the Green Room and know that so many presidents were there. It's kind of like the ship of Theseus to me, because it's like, yeah, it's the same room because the White House has the exact same layout as it did after the Reconstruction. But it's like, is that really the same room? Like, it's the same room in theory, but it's not really the same room because it was demolished and then rebuilt from the ground up. So I'm like, is that really the same room? To me, it isn't, because it's you know, it doesn't have the same walls and features. Kind of like how the Ford Theater isn't the Ford Theater. Kind of the same thing. If y'all didn't know, the Ford Theater, which is where Lincoln got shot, actually turned into an office building for a while. And this whole theater here had been demolished for like a century or so, and they had built it into a normal office building. It was eventually abandoned, and it was soon to actually be demolished, but then they, I believe it was the National Park Commission, decided to buy the building, and then they raised enough funds through government grants to be able to rebuild it in its original configuration that it had during the time Lincoln was shot, and they also turned it into an actual venue where they could produce plays. You can see that by the modern lighting here. So a little bit interesting with that. Like a lot of people don't really know that about the Ford's Theater either. I think the house that is over from the Ford's Theater, the Peterson House where Lincoln died, I think this building was also refurbished to remain original to what it was. But once again, the building had gone through a lot of extensive refits and upgrades over the years, and this is once again more so a reproduction of the room that Lincoln died in, from what I'm remembering. But really interesting stuff all around with that sort of history. You just... Is that Nick? Wiretap him. But beyond that, it's a really interesting sort of a thing about a lot of the historic buildings in Washington, D.C. They generally had to be rebuilt into their original configuration at some point, and they weren't that way forever. So anyways, with that,
You know, something else, by the way, this is something that's sort of off the topic of the president. So just something that's just sort of an interesting fact about the United States is that actually most people will not know this actually. But can y'all believe there was a time in American history where we actually planned on nuking the moon just to prove a point to the Soviets that we could? Like, did you know that, Enforcer, that there was actually a time we considered that?
I did.
Yeah, it was called Project A119 or A119. And it was when it was during the Cold War, by the way, around 1960, I think. The U.S. Air Force proposed to literally detonate a nuclear bomb on the moon where it'd be visible from the Earth, where the Soviets could literally see it from the ground without a telescope, just to intimidate the Soviets after they launched Sputnik, because we were so desperate at that point to make sure we won the Cold War and put the Russians in their place or the Soviets in their place, that we were going to literally just nuke the moon. There was no military advantage whatsoever to doing that. It was just purely psychological and just a way to scare the Soviets. And that was solely it. That's kind of wild.
It's legitimately crazy, honestly, when you think about the kind of stuff that we would even consider. Like, I don't know if y'all know this, but there was actually a bomb that we came up with. I think it was preceding the Gulf War. We were like, what if we dropped a bomb on people, but it made them want to do things with people of the same sex or gender as themselves? We actually consider that as an idea. Did you know that, Matthew?
Yes, I did know that. It was called something else I can't repeat, but
Yeah.
it was, yeah, I have heard of that.
But there was an idea to do that at the time. But you know, something else interesting I wanted to show you, because this is actually a little bit crazy, is Washington D.C. through time. Because you know, we all know what the National Mall looks like here. Let me show y'all what it looks like, at least recently. Looks like that. But if y'all did not know this, at a time, I'll actually show y'all what the area looked like a little bit beforehand. This is actually what a painting showed the National Mall to look like in 1846. So to give you all a little bit of a relative view or viewpoint as to what you're looking at, this is the Capitol building without its modern day dome. This was back when it had its original copper dome, which was inspired heavily off of the Pantheon in Rome. And this was actually where, at least in the modern day, I'll show you where this painting was taken as a viewpoint. This is near to the United States Botanical Garden, which exists right here. That is generally where that small row of buildings right there existed, is where the National Botanical Garden exists now. Then in 1865, here's an actual picture of the National Mall with cattle in the National Mall. like crazy.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's crazy.
Honestly,
There's
it
the
looks more
Treasury
peaceful
building.
and nice there than it does currently.
Yeah, you know what's crazy? There's the Treasury building over there. That's the building you see on the far right. And there's the White House center frame behind the trees. Like, that's just absolutely crazy to look at the skyline of Washington, D.C. back in the day. And let me go see. Here you go. Here's what it looked like in 1918.
Interesting.
I don't
Now,
even.
Enforcer, you want another fact real quick while we're still on this like fun fact topic here and we're on the DC thing and everything else. You want another fun fact that I'm sure nobody's ever heard about.
Go ahead. Yeah, I want to hear it.
So everybody knows, I'm sure a lot of people have seen the movie called Black Hawk Down, right? Like it's the movie like that dramatizes the Battle of Mogadishu
Yeah.
from 1993. So the interesting thing about that was the Somali warlord took the Black Hawk helicopter pilot hostage. But the one part that people have never really heard of is that Somali warlord actually put the Black Hawk helicopter pilot in a cage and then sold tickets to people to come see him in the cage, like he was in a zoo or something like that. Like the guy literally went and was like on the street telling people in Somalia, pay $5 or whatever and come see the Black Hawk pilot in the cage over here. And people would line up and start paying this guy money to come and see the pilot in the cage in Somalia. Like they would actually line up and come in there and like go through like it was an exhibition to see this guy in the cage. It was like a trophy type thing that they had going on there. And they literally put up like a whole exhibit and like a sign out front saying, here's the American pilot in chains, here's his name, here's this, that, and another. And it was just wild. It was really crazy.
That is insane. They actually legitimately had a human zoo for the guy. That's messed up.
Yeah, they did. It was wild. And the guy was making real money. Like that Somali warlord was making some decent cash on like having that guy as like a zoo exhibit in there. Because believe it or not, people well, this is something that's very believable. People in Somalia are very, very poor. It's a very, very poor area. But for some reason, the Somalis felt it important enough to pay the warlord money to go see the pilot in the cage. Like that's baffling to me.
That's like legitimately crazy. Also, Matty, I was just reading the caption on this clip because I don't know if you see this, man, but in the middle of the modern National Mall, that looks like a factory right there, doesn't it? With the chimneys and all that sort of stuff. Like that looks like a
It
giant.
kind of does.
Yeah. So interesting enough, apparently these were temporary buildings for the War Department, and the chimneys were a part of the power plant that ran the electricity for those buildings.
Oh, that's really crazy. I didn't know that.
Yeah, I didn't know that either. I never knew that existed. This is the first time I ever heard of it. Here's the Museum of Natural History over here to the left. This is the Smithsonian the Smithsonian Castle off to the right. Back there, you can see the Cannon Building, and I think the Harvey Building or something like that, which is over here to the left. Union Station is over there, almost out of frame on the far left, and the Library of Congress is back there. Something that y'all might find interesting here, to tell you a little bit of governmental history. The Supreme Court building does not exist yet in this picture. That was built in the 30s under the FDR administration, and up until that point, the Supreme Court actually shared the Capitol building with the Congress and had a special part. I believe it was actually in the main building on the East Wing that housed the Supreme Court. And it wasn't until the 30s that they got their own individual building. So a little bit interesting with that as a fact. But let's see. Okay, here you go. Here's the War Department as it appeared during World War II before the Pentagon was built. You can see the.
They're trying to currently rename the Department of Defense to the War Department again. Like there's a current thing they're trying to actually get it renamed to that.
Actually, I'm for that. I think that the War Department is the proper name. The Department of Defense. The Department of Defense makes it sound like it's only for defense, but it's like war is war. It's like it doesn't matter whether it's defensive or offensive. It's war. So it's like this department of the government solely focuses on the waging of war, whether it be offensive or defensive. Because there are plenty of wars like the Gulf War where it wasn't necessarily defensive. It was an offensive war on our end to enforce international law. And it's like, for me, I think that the War Department, War Department is a better fit for the Department of Defense than the Department of Defense, in my opinion.
Interesting. That's kind of wild. I will say this though. I think out of State Department of Defense, I say leave it as it is. Personally, I don't want to call it the Department of War or the War Department. I think Department of Defense sounds more dignified because obviously we're not just defensive. Like we do things offensively sometimes as well. But Department of Defense just sounds better in my opinion.
I think the Department of War or the War Department sounds good to me because if you ever hear of anything in any major conflict beyond really Korea, it's always the Department of Defense. But before that, it was the War Department. And I think that was just a much better fitting sort of a description because it described what the department did. It was a department that its sole purpose was the waging of war. Because it's
Yeah,
like
yeah.
because we don't say the defense of Vietnam. We call it the Vietnam War. So like, what was the Department of Defense doing? It was fighting a war. So their primary job is the affairs of war and everything pertaining to it. Kind of like how the Department of State is the matters of the state, of the nation, and foreign policy. You know, it's
under Bush. Under Bush, it was called the Department of Brutal Invasions under Bush, but then they renamed it the Department of Defense after that.
man, that actually it was the Department of Denuclearization, and then they changed that later to something else. But anyways, this honestly, man, it's whack to look at the way the War Department existed before then. Because look, they have parking lots and everything in the National Mall. Like it's just bizarre. And then this is what it looks like in 1942 on the other side, not where the War Department is. You can see a little bit of the War Department down there, but you can actually see that the Smithsonian was being fleshed out a lot more at this point. And I also got to say, folks, I really like the trees. Like I feel like the National Mall as it exists today is generally devoid of trees. Like it feels like when you're there, it never feels like there's a lot of trees there. But you can see them here, and generally, for some reason, they looked better back then than they do now. I don't know what it is, but they're a lot more visible back then. Also, let's see here. This is the modern view of the National Mall, what it looks like today. For some reason, man,
It looks pretty sharp. I like it.
It looks clean. It actually does. And look, they've got the nice patterns in the grass. Like I like that with the mowing. Like that's really nice. But it actually looks really clean. But I gotta say, it's humble beginnings back in the 1840s is just wild. Looking at that and thinking that that's what the National Mall used to look like. Dirt roads, simple Capitol, no extended wings, no rebuilt dome. But I gotta say, the rebuilt dome of the Capitol is baller. Way better than the copper dome that they had for the beginning of the country's history. The modern Capitol dome is far better looking. I mean, who in the world could look at that dome on this Capitol building and go, nah, that doesn't look as good as the copper dome? Like, this is the best looking dome out there in the world, honestly.
Yeah, I would say it looks pretty good personally. Can you believe that today they actually had a tornado warning in DC, and there was like a legit
No way.
a tornado warning. It was so bad looking up there. I saw live stream camera footage of DC. You could see like literally this thunder wall like in DC. And also there was some flash flooding that was apparently happening there as well today. So, you know, I know some people are going to be like, oh, Matt's engaging conspiracies because he's like making a connection about the flooding around the country. I will say this. I'm not a conspiracy person, by the way. The flooding around the country is like pretty unprecedented. Like it could be just legit like a climate change or something happening, or maybe it's just a bad time in weather, but it's certainly unusual. Like I haven't really seen flooding like this in the country in so many different places at one specific time, like right now, that I've seen in ages. It's flooding in New Mexico, it's flooding in North Carolina, it's flooding in Texas, it's flooding a little bit in Washington, D.C., and it's flooding in more places too that I can't even remember off the top of my head. So it's bad, and it's bad flooding too. It's not light. It's pretty serious.
Yeah, I mean, I would honestly have to say, man, it's probably, like, if I had to go with anything, the easiest answer would probably be climate change. Maybe the best answer, because, you know, beyond that, I couldn't really come up with a good one. And I'm pretty sure that the government isn't controlling the weather to go, let's flood ourselves out of operation. Like, that would be a little bit of a tough one. I don't know. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. I hope you all enjoyed the fun facts, by the way, because I like going through the fun facts and just talking about historical stuff and things that are interesting and neat. But with the Jefferson... Oh yeah, I forgot to tell you, this whole place was a swamp, by the way, down here. Like you could take Shody to the swamp by just bringing them out in front of the White House. So they actually drained all of this, and that's why they have this little finger here. I forgot what it's called. But this finger here exists because of the draining of the swamp, along with the Lincoln Memorial. Because when the Lincoln Memorial was being built, Lincoln Memorial construction. Let me go show you all this. Back when it was being constructed, it was actually being constructed in a swamp. And I want to see if I can find y'all the picture. Here you go. That's actually the picture of what the Lincoln Memorial was originally sitting in before they drained out all of the swamp here in D.C., which is weird.
It really looks like Southern Florida. It looks like almost identical to it, except for the elevation in the background behind the monument there. But yeah, it's looking pretty similar to Palm Beach down there a little bit.
Yeah, it was crazy, man, honestly. They drained the swamp. They ended up clearing it all out. And that's why you have the tidal basin now, which is all that's left of the swamp. And this allowed them to reclaim a whole bunch of land and do neat stuff. Like, for example, the cherry blossoms, which are famous. Like, here, let me show y'all. The cherry blossoms, which are incredibly famous. They're very beautiful. I mean, look at that. That's a beautiful picture right there. but still impressive stuff. I got to be honest with y'all. I really like Washington D.C. I especially like the federal area of Washington D.C. where the federal buildings are at. It's gorgeous, actually. It's really beautiful to look at. And honestly, I would like to take another trip to DC someday. It's just that I don't know when I'd ever be able to manage to do that. And I see some people saying, yes, they never drained the swamp. It's still a swamp. I'm not getting into that political bullshit, but like, I'm just talking about the real swamp. Like they drained that one.
No, they mean like they're wanting to know if they actually drained the real swamp, not the political aspect of it.
Yeah, they drained the real swamp. It doesn't exist. Like it's all reclaimed land now. But like as far as like getting into the political stuff about it's still a swamp. Oh come on, oh whoop, a big whoop. It's always been a swamp. Man, I saw something the other day that was really interesting. There's blood on the steps of the Capitol in the U.S. Capitol building that's been there since the 1890s. Did you know that?
No, I did not know that.
Let's see, blood stains on Capitol stairs. Let me go see if I can get this. Here they are. Yeah, here they are. These right here. They've dried up. It's like, it's about 130-year-old
Whose blood is it?
It was the blood of a senator who got shot and killed by a reporter.
A reporter?
Yeah, they explained the story. What happened is that this senator, I forgot who he was a senator for, what state and everything, but he had a salacious affair with a woman of the night, and a reporter actually found out about it and was able to confirm it and started running stories on it. And so this senator's reputation was ruined, like literally ruined by the story. Because back in the day, having salacious affairs with people, that's generally considered a really bad thing. Nowadays, the standards are a lot different. But back then, it was career ending. The guy lost his Senate seat because of it. And so this senator just started to mock this reporter, call him names, try and discredit him and ruin his life and his reputation. And he was in the Capitol he was on his way out as a senator at this point. He wasn't getting reelected again. He had lost the Senate seat. And he came up to the reporter that ran the original story on him, beat him a little bit here near the staircase, and that reporter went outside to a hardware store right across from the Capitol, bought a revolver, and came back in and blasted the guy right here on the staircase, right in the head. Like, brought it right up to his head, shot him right here. He fell dead on the stairs instantly. And you know what's even crazier? The son of a bitch was acquitted for killing the guy. Like, the reporter didn't even go to prison. He got acquitted on the charges. It wasn't a presidential pardon or anything. It's just that the jury went, he did nothing wrong. Well, you'd think he's justified. Although there's clearly premeditation to it and it was a murder. They said that it was clearly in self-defense and the guy got off. And it's like, that is just crazy. Like, it's a crazy thing. But somehow the bloodstains have never been able to be cleaned off of these steps, literally stain the marble that they're on. And it's been there still to this day. It's still there right now. You can go in the Capitol and see those bloodstains on the stairs.
Oh, that's kind of wild. They're kind of creepy, actually. It's kind of wild they couldn't get the bloodstains out of the marble either. It's like they don't have like, bleach or something, or like nothing's going to get that out.
They tried everything, man. They tried bleach. They tried everything. They had the Capitol cleaning staff on this, from how the story goes, for about a year before they gave up and just said it's just soaked into the marble somehow. And we can't get it out. And since then, it's just been there forever. So whenever you walk up these stairs, I forgot which side of the building this is in and what specific staircase it is, but every time you walk past these stairs, you walk by the bloodstains of that very incident that happened back in 1898, I think.
Yeah, I would have never known that either. I would have just thought somebody spilt the drink or something there.
Yeah, it's a crazy thing. A lot of history in the Capitol building. The Capitol building has never really been rebuilt on the inside like the White House, and it's not new like the Supreme Court. Most of the building is actually original, rebuilt after the burning in 1814. So pretty much all of the history that ever happened in the Capitol building, you can still literally pass by clear instances of history that happened in the building from pretty much the 1830s on. It's a really cool kind of a thing. But anyways, with that, it is time for us to get on into some super chat questions. We've been derelict in our duties to get to super chat questions, just yapping about different facts and information. And yeah, John Dye, he did keep reporting. Like, the reporter just kept reporting. Everyone just kind of went, all is well. It's all good. He can keep doing what he's doing. He kept being a reporter. And he was just known, don't mess with the guy. Don't beat him up. He will go to the hardware store across the street, buy a gun, and shoot you with it. It's like, so nobody really messed with the guy too much. But anyways, with that, I hope that does address that well, and we're on to the next one.
Do you say hardware store is like slang for a gun store, or you mean like a legit hardware store?
A legit hardware store, because back in the day you just sold the guns in the hardware stores. Like there was no differentiation of like a gun store and a hardware store. Like you went to the hardware store, you could buy a hammer, a pistol, like if
Damn.
you hear about the mafia getting their Tommy guns back in Chicago, they got them out of hardware stores. Like because the hardware
Is that why they
stores,
call them hammers? Is that what they call them, like hardware and hammers and stuff? Because they sold them in the hardware store?
maybe I don't really know about that, but I do know that pretty much the main place up until recently that most guns were sold in, they were sold in hardware stores because you know that one Colt 1903 I have, Matthew. If you go look at its authentication papers, it was actually bought by its original owner back in 1926 at a hardware store in Hartford, Connecticut, like out of the hardware store.
Huh. That's
Like
different.
yeah, that was just how it was done back then. It's kind of like how you could go to the drugstores back in the day and buy arsenic and cyanide over the counter, and no one batted an eye. Like like it was a different time back then. It was a completely different time. But like back in the day, I also don't know if y'all know this, but back before gas stations existed, you had to go to the drugstore to get gasoline for your car. It's a really interesting kind of a thing. But with that, I hope that does address that interestingly enough well, because there's so many interesting things that you just wouldn't know about back then. Like another cool thing, Matthew, like to show you, well, I won't show you something from our hometown, but there's a building in our town that's made of brick, like our hometown that we're from. It's made of brick, really thick walls, and it's got a deep basement to it. You can't really see it from the outside, but it's got a deep basement to it. That was originally our town's ice shed. They would bring ice in on a refrigerated, well, not a refrigerated boxcar, but an insulated boxcar on the railroads, and they would stack the ice in there and fill it with rock salt and hay, which would create a reaction that would keep that ice shed cold year round, so that way you could pull ice out at any time of the year whenever you needed it or whenever anyone wanted to buy it, and you could make ice cream, you could cool stuff with it, keep meat lockers, cold, like that sort of a thing. And that was common across the whole country until mechanical refrigeration became a thing.
People from our hometown figured that out?
People across the country had that system. It was literally everywhere. Like you could find
Oh, dang.
an ice shed. Let's see. Let me go pull up an ice shed. Let's see here, or an ice house as they were called. Let me see if I can show y'all a good example of an ice house from back in the day. The ice house.
If you were like if you tended to the ice house, were you called the Iceman?
I think so. Actually, I think that's what they're.
Man, that would be cool. Like honestly, I'd work at the ice house just to be able to be called the Iceman. Like, oh yeah, there's the Iceman right there. He's just coming up to fix the ice house. Yeah, let's look. That's him right over there.
Dude, I'm trying to find like the like ice house storage thing. Dang, let's see. I can't find. Hold up. Oh, here we go. Here is an ice house, or an example of an ice house for the large part. Well, actually, yeah, here we go. This is a good example of it. So they would take the ice because, the lakes would freeze over up in places like Maine and stuff. And they had a huge industry up there of ice cutters that would go out onto these lakes. They just start cutting the ice up on the lakes into blocks. They would take the blocks, they would slide them onto insulated box cars, and they would truck them around the country on on an economy scale. So it was really cheap to do this. And they would bring these ice blocks, to everywhere in the country, and they would store them in these ice houses or these ice sheds until someone would buy it later. And the ice, because it was having a reaction with the rock salt and the hay and everything, and it was insulating itself, it would stay good for months on end without having to be replenished. So you could literally get ice at any point that you wanted from an ice shed or an ice house in your town.
That's pretty cool, actually. Like that's pretty ingenious. That's very ingenuitive.
Yeah, it's really neat. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And the next one here goes to Wan10 Quadruple 8, who puts in a 10. He said, another fun fact, since you guys said beaver something there. He said, let's see here. What the hell? Wan10, this is a wild fact right here. I'm not sure if I want to read this one off. I'm going to read it off anyway. He said, castoreum, which is a substance that comes from beaver anal glands. That's just the fact, by the way. He said, yes, gross as hell, but he said it's used in vanilla flavor in foods that we eat and in perfumes.
Oh,
LOL. LOC. Are you sure about that,
That-
Wan10? Are you positive? 'Cause I don't think I've ever bought any vanilla extract or anything like that. It's got anything like that in it. Like, I'm pretty sure.
Hold up. I gotta go pull it up now.
Also, it's gross, by the way. That's nasty.
Oh my God, it is. It's
Don't tell me
considered
that's
safe by
not.
the FDA. It's a real deal thing. Oh my God,
It really comes from the animal?
yeah, it does actually. It does.
Ah,
Ew, that's nasty.
alright.
Okay, well, that just changed my opinion on vanilla flavored everything. But I do thank you for sharing that with me. I'm not going to curse you for sharing that with us. I thank you for sharing that with us. But that is real, folks. That is real. That is actually something that is done, and the FDA has declared it safe. It's not going to stop me from eating anything vanilla flavored, but I'm not going to be able to look at it the same again. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running and sharing that very unsavory fact with us. And with that, we are on to the next one.
I don't even know if I wanna think any deeper on that, but,
Do not.
um,
Like, let's just leave it there.
how they extract that? But, oh my god, that's disgusting. But anyways, moving on to our next one here. This one goes to, Gandalf, who puts it at 10. They said, "Can we talk about those, giant swamp rats in the Deep South, nutria, I think, and I've seen recipes. Are people really eating them?"
So nutria are pretty much beavers. Well, they quite literally are just beavers right here. We have them all over the South. We've seen a couple of them before.
Nasty creatures.
Yeah, they're not great. I don't really like them too much, but I've never eaten one before. I never heard of anyone eating them before. Generally, the only place I've ever seen them are roadkill, and I saw one running across the road, and it got bumped by a car, and then it kept going and made it across the road. So, wouldn't know a lot about them to be able to speak on them. But I don't really like the swamp rat sort of a deal. And also, they're giant. Like, well, I won't show y'all that picture. It was kind of like a size scale of the nutria, but I don't like them too much because they really don't have a lot to do with, like, beavers are cute. These things aren't. Let me go show y'all.
Aren't these invasive too? Like, these things are like, they multiply rapidly.
Yeah, they are. They are not really great to have around. Also, they get that orangish color in their teeth from the high iron content. Their teeth are quite literally almost made of iron. That's why they have that reddish hue to them. But the beaver, on the other hand, is actually cute. Like, the beaver is cute. The beaver is cool. Beavers are neat. And their teeth aren't as red. They're more so yellowish due to the lower iron content in their teeth. But still, I like the beavers a lot more than the nutria. The nutria are little bastards. The beavers are cute. But with that, I hope that does address that. Well, I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. And also, did y'all know that the closest relative, speaking of animals, to the elephant is actually the hyrax? Have you ever heard of it, Matthew?
And you said it's closest to what?
It's the closest living relative in terms of DNA to the elephant.
No, I didn't know that, and I'll never guess it either. This thing looks like a mix between a seal, a wombat, and a lemur.
Dude, these things are funny, dude. These things are hilarious. Look at that. That thing looks like a dweeb.
Honestly, it looks like it could be pretty cool. Like, but you're not really sure about it until you talk to it a little bit.
These things have a very distinct kind of a scream. Let me see if I can pull up a hyrax and just get y'all the noise that a hyrax would make. Hyrax noise. Here we go. I'll just play this clip for y'all. This ought to get it across. Let's see here. Can we unmute that? That's the sound that a hyrax makes.
Yeah, once you talk to him, you realize he's a little bit off his rocker.
These things are a little crazy. But look at that thing. I mean, that thing's wild. It's got vampire teeth.
Damn. That thing has got some chompers. Like, I didn't even realize that. That thing looks like it could mess you up.
And you know what's crazy? These things are herbivores. I don't even know what they have the teeth for. Also, huh. Yeah, but you know, these things are crazy because they're herbivores. They only eat vegetables, you know, plants, things like that. So it's a little bit wild that they have teeth like that. But they're pretty cool. I've seen a lot of people like petting them and hanging out with them. They're pretty chill. But I think they're neat, actually. I think these things are pretty interesting. And I also think the sound they make is pretty funny. Look at that side profile, though.
Man, that thing has no chin line.
Bro, this thing's a chud jack. Like, oh my lord. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that well. A little interesting fact about something kind of like a nutria. But these things are actually endemic to the lands of Australia. They're an Australian creature. So you won't really find them much else anywhere but Australia. And so with that, a big thanks to you so much once again for support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next super chat here goes to JC Atkins, who puts in a $20 donation. And thank you very much, JC, for that support very much. He said, it's good that you're able to give the youngsters these kinds of historical facts. I'm old, so I know most of them, and I've lived a lot of them. And take a chat question from your favorite LSA Navy NCO.
Hey, and thank you so much for the support from our favorite LSA Navy NCO. And we always like to talk about the interesting historical facts. Funnily enough, they actually keep a lot of people around in the question segment because people are like, oh, is that true? Like, honestly, we're kind of like those YouTube videos in the question segment these days of like 10 interesting facts about U.S. presidents. Number 1, President Biden liked ice cream, or something like, it's like the clear, obvious facts that you should know already, like, just stuff from modern history. But I'm glad to know that you do enjoy them and have heard a lot about them. But beyond that, we will make sure to take a live chat in your honor, JC Atkins. And so with that, what do we got, Matthew?
All right, and this one is going to go to from the live chat, AGXSR, who said, do you think this could be Putin calling in a favor from Iran is the reason why the Houthis are suddenly attacking all these cargo ships?
I would say maybe. It actually might be the case, but I also think that the Houthis are kind of just operating from Iranian commands, which are coming down because the Iranians aren't exactly happy about being bombed. And while they really can't respond to us yet, they want to respond to us in some way, and the Houthis are the easiest and quickest way to get back at it. And so with that, I hope that does address that live chat the best I can. Big thanks to JC Atkins, our favorite LSA Navy NCO, once again for supporting this channel and helping this thing to keep running. And also, I was just told, I got to correct this here really quickly, that the Hyrax ain't from Australia. I got to go find this out here. Holy moly, they aren't. They are from Africa.
What's the names there on the left?
I think these are the different kinds of species of the Hyrax that might exist. Let's see here. Oh, that one's cute.
Yeah, I like that one there. A young Hyrax. Once they get older, though, they look real bad.
once they get older, they start looking busted. But that one's pretty cute. Honestly, that one's really cute.
Yeah, I like that one too. That fur looks really soft.
Dude, this thing honestly is just kind of vibing here, chilling even. It's just enjoying its life. And they're superficially similar to marmots or overly large. Oh, that is cute. It's a wild hamster.
They call it a pika.
They call it a pika. I guess that's where Pikachu
without the
comes from.
chew.
Yeah, I was jinx. But dude, look at these. Oh, those are cute. Those are kind of like the wild European hamsters. Which I've got to show y'all now because I just brought them up. The European hamster. This is a wild hamster. This is not one that lives in a Petco. This is a real living wild hamster that lives mostly across Europe. They're endangered now, but you wouldn't believe it. The biggest sanctuary for these animals, these hamsters in particular, is the largest cemetery in Vienna, Austria. They live within the cemetery. There's thousands of them that live in there. They don't eat any of the bodies, of course. They just kind of graze them. They don't eat them. Like I was just making that clear because some people might be like, well, how are they living in there? Are they eating the bodies? No, they don't do that. They just like forage around on the surface. But it's pretty cool to think that they live in there. And I think... Let's see here. I'm trying to see where in the world that cemetery is. It's a really big one once you find it. I think it... No, it's not that. That's just small, like, tenements or something like that. I can't find the cemetery. It's somewhere in the center of the city, actually, because the city kind of grew out around it. But it's really cool, actually, because there's a lot of these little European hamsters in there. Like, look at that one. Oh, yeah, see, it's the Vienna Central Cemetery where this picture was taken of the hamster.
These things look like they're scheming a little bit. I don't know why. Like, something about these hamsters, they look a little bit shifty.
But the pikas are super cute. Like, let's see. What about... So this one is piling, let's see, vegetation pile drying on rocks for subsequent storage. This is in Utah. So apparently pikas live here in America. I did not know that.
They're pretty smart. They just go out there and like dry them on the rocks and they like take them on into the storage house. That's pretty smart.
Yeah, that's really smart. These things got like a little industry going on here. But I like these pikas. These things look really cute. Look at that. It's like a mix of like a bunny and like a hamster. Like it's a really cute sort of an animal. But beyond that, yeah, the Hyrax looks like it's just chilling. Like they look pretty cute in most pictures, but in some of them they look busted. But apparently these things are not from Australia. They're from Africa. Correction on that from Jack Jelly. Thank you for clarifying that. But Pretty cool, actually, pretty neat. Also, apparently, Matthew, some of these live near Mecca. Inshallah. Like, so apparently, like, I did not know that. They live in the desert. I did not know that. So they live
Don't
in.
tell the CIA that. We'll try to hook them up with mics again.
Dude, the Hyrax be mic'd up. And also, apparently, there may be some Houthi Hyraxes as well because they live within western Yemen.
Huh, that's interesting. Yeah, we definitely need to mic those bad boys up. We need to get some mics on those fellas.
Bro, there's Lebanese Hyraxes, Israeli Hyraxes. There are Saudi Arabian Hyraxes. Some of them also immigrated to Riyadh in search of greater opportunities, as per the special population that literally exists right at Riyadh for some reason. And then there's some in Yemen, a little bit in Oman, and then loads of them everywhere else throughout the rest of Africa. So a little bit neat with that. Did not know that about them. But apparently, Hyraxes are enemies of the Republic, so we will no longer be speaking kindly of the Hyrax. But anyways, I'm just kidding. The Hyraxes are neat. But anyways, with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next super chat goes to Wen10 quadruple 8 once again. And he puts in a 10. And he said, another fun story to add to the awesome rabbit hole tonight. Sergeant Stubby, the goodest of dogs, saved their camp from ambush and would run into the trenches to find injured, and the first dog given the rank.
And this is Sergeant Stubby. Little cute dog. Hero dog.
Kind of like Patron a little bit.
Yeah, kind of like him. A similar sized dog. Thing got medals out the wazoo. Look at him. Like that thing was living the life here.
Yeah, a little happy fella.
It's a happy dog. They preserved the dog after he passed. There he is right there.
Is that really him?
That's him. Like that's him actually.
Wow.
Wow. Look at that dog. But
They turn him soulless. His eyes are just like little black holes.
also, here he is taking a re-enlistment, apparently. Like, I didn't know that dogs re-enlisted. But beyond that,
Eternal service.
he serves even through death. But beyond that, a pretty interesting little dog there. And he was the first dog ever given the rank in the world. But still, gotta say. Also, by the way, the dog was wearing a dog tag in this picture, so I guess that's the most dog tag ever existing in history, at least up until that point. But I do thank you for the support and sharing that little rabbit hole with us, Wonton quadruple 8, because that is an interesting rabbit hole. There's a lot of animals that actually have very interesting stories and histories to them in war, but Sergeant Stubby is one of the first. But a big thanks to you so much once again. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a $5 super chat from Nathan Freeman. He said, ILTV said the Greek ships are owned by Jewish owners in Greece.
That's technically true. They're Jewish-backed companies. But I still don't understand why that's like the thing that people are focusing on. Because it's like, it's still impeding any kind of commercial shipping. And from what we know, it doesn't appear that I believe it's the Eternity Sea was Israeli or Jewish owned, so they're just generally attacking anything and everything to deny them access to the region. But with that, I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep it running. I hope that does address that quite well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Terry Stratus, who puts in the 5. They said, this is an Egyptian problem. As ships go a different route, it costs Egypt money.
It costs them money, but it costs us money too, because we're trying to get our goods and cargo through that area. So yeah, that's kind of true to an extent, but everyone's in to lose a good amount of money. But I do thank you for the support and helping this channel to keep on running. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
All right, and our next one goes to Hoodoo, Texas, who puts in the 5. He said, is it possible that the West no longer thinks of the Suez Canal as essential anymore?
Certainly not. The Suez Canal holds a very strong importance even to this day. So I'd have to say that we still consider the Suez Canal to be a vitally important passageway. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. I do thank you for support and helping this channel to keep running. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have another 5 from Hoodoo, Texas, and he said Xi Jinping may be trying to start a scrap to stay in power. He's ostensibly getting shaky in China. That was my theory, Hoodoo. We actually had a very long and drawn out, and I think you were here for it, a very long and drawn out discussion about that, about how internal political struggles cause countries typically to start looking for fights abroad, so that way they can distract from the internal struggles that they're having with whoever's in power. So I think that's 100% the case. And it even applies to the United States as well. I'm not going to go any further than that because it gets political, but it applies to every country equally. That phenomenon, when countries and leaders start having internal political problems, they look outward to start conflicts. It's just the way it works. Sometimes they're justified and sometimes they're not, but they do look to distract. And a geopolitical event serves as that distraction to try to take away the political heat from the leader. But Enforcer, what say you?
I'd have to say that that's true to an extent, but I think that the Chinese are going to try and settle their internal issues before they focus externally. I'm still going to stick to my guns on that one. We talked that one until our faces were blue. It's a really good conversation though, a couple of streams ago. But a big thanks to you so much once again for the support and help with this channel to keep it running. We will have to wait and see. But a big thanks to you so much once again. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a 5 from Malice Gaming. He said, I am a nuisance wildlife control operator. Please do not even jokingly take raccoons. It's a felony if you don't have multiple licenses. And you mean like taking them out, like shooting the raccoons or something? I'll be honest with you. I'm not sure if Alabama's got that because where I came from, people were like taking raccoons out left and right, like with no issue. Not me personally. I'm not into hunting. I'm also not into like hurting animals and stuff. I generally like all animals, even if they're vicious like animals like raccoons sometimes. I try not to mess with animals. And also I definitely don't hunt them either. That's just not my thing. But Alabama must not enforce that very well because they were taking stuff out. They were taking, hell, the place we grew up, they were taking everything out. Like I don't think anything was off the table. But Enforcer, what say you?
And also, according to Outdoor Alabama, raccoon season, no close season, may be hunted daytime or nighttime hours, private owned and leased lands, no bag limit, open permit, public land, fiber party. Like, it goes on to explain. You can pretty much blast away at raccoons in the state of Alabama until you turn blue in the face or run out of ammo. Whichever one comes first, at least here in this state. In other states, it might be different. It might be that people are overhunting raccoons, but here in Alabama, they say blast away. You can make a raccoon coat easy here in Alabama because no one's stopping you from racking up a kill count that would put, let's see, Simo Aya to shame in Finland. But with that, I hope that does address that well, but there is no limit to hunting raccoons in Alabama. Now owning a raccoon as a pet, I think that is actually banned in Alabama, but shooting them, nah, there's no limit. You can go to town apparently. So raccoon coats might be in our future. So with that, I'm just kidding, by the way. I wouldn't hunt a raccoon, me personally. But the coat did sure as hell look good. You know what? Let me go pull that up, Matthew. A raccoon coat. What would that look like? Holy smokes, these actually look pretty damn impressive. Let me see if I can. Dude, that's actually legit. Like, that actually looks pretty damn good. Look at that.
$7,000? Do I say that price properly?
Oh my God, $7,000? No, that's not.
Bro, raccoons are common. Like, what are they charging so much for? It's like you can find those everywhere. It's like I don't know how many raccoons it takes to put one coat together, but I'm like, surely not that much.
No, it doesn't take that much.
I'm just saying, I'm not like a person who's like into this, like, you know, high-end designer clothes and stuff like that. It's not really my thing. But for the people that want like fur, like, you know, like a fur jacket or something, who the hell is looking for a raccoon fur jacket? Like, I've never heard anybody say they've got a raccoon coat or like they're flexing a raccoon coat. I've heard of people flexing like a mink coat, but not like a raccoon fur or something. Like, that's not exactly what I call high-end.
Honestly, dude, spending that kind of cost for a like, if this was affordable, I would be like, yeah, I got a raccoon coat. But this is $6.5 grand. You got to be nuts to spend that kind of money on raccoon fur. Like, you can literally do this for free. Like, if you wanted to have the time. What the hell? Someone made a puffy coat out of raccoon. That just looks bad. Like, that doesn't even look
it's too
good.
small.
Yeah, dude, that's ridiculous looking. Hold up. Now we got to look at these. Dude, those are terrible. Like, you gotta make it a long, giant coat to make it look good. Look at this guy.
You know, the only coats I've ever seen that I'm like, that actually looks pretty good. Have you seen like a python coat, like made out of like python?
I wouldn't like it. I don't like much things made out of reptiles, but a python trench coat? Yeah, that's
not a trench coat, man. Like a python just coat, like a python coat.
This one?
Click that dude right there, the third one over.
This one?
Yeah, that one. Is that a python right there?
Yeah, apparently.
Ah, Yeah, I mean, that looks pretty decent. I mean, I wouldn't have it me personally. I'm sure it costs like something crazy, but it looks pretty cool. Like I will say, like I kind of like it. Like out of all the ones, I saw a UFC fighter wearing it one time. Conor McGregor even had to stop his trash talk to even compliment the coat. He's like, "Man, that's a fine coat right there. I gotta give you credit, man. That's a nice coat." I was like, "Actually, that is a nice coat." I'm like, "That actually is a nice coat for real." But it's probably insanely expensive, probably like 10 grand or something. Because I know, like, where do you even go find the pythons? I guess like Florida or something. You got to go hunt the pythons down and like put them on the coat. Like it seems like a lot of labor.
You know, one thing I don't like is alligator boots. I always found these to be tacky.
Yeah, is that real alligator?
I don't really know, honestly. It might not be.
Hmm. Yeah, I don't know. I don't really like these boots like this. Like I like cowboy boots, but not ones that look like that. I like the normal traditional ones.
Dude, you know what kind of people wear these boots. It's the city slickers that want to pretend like they're country people. That's the kind of boots. Like they're right
Hmm.
there.
Yeah,
We,
that's the type.
we know some people like that that had these boots. You remember them, Matthew, don't you? A little bit?
Posers.
Posers, that's what we call them. Um, I just got to say, folks, if you're riding around in like a lifted Jeep and you've got boots, but you've never been in the country once in your life, don't be so proud about it. Like just be like, I like the style, but don't try and pretend like you're one of those people, because like it's like I'm not one of those people, but at the same time it's really cringy because we met those people a lot in our lives, and it's like you're not one of those people, you're one of us. So maybe don't try and pretend like you're from the show Yellowstone. It's a little weird, but anyways. With that, I hope that does address that somewhat well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Bruce Lee, what's in a five. And Bruce said, so Johnson was being Johnson about his Johnson because Johnson and Johnson didn't have enough Johnson for him. LSA.
Bruce, I never thought of it that way, but you might be right. but still, thank you for the support, and long live the Lee Spring Army. That was a pretty good one. And we're on to the next one.
We also have a five from Kyle Padell, and he says, interesting fact, Poland adopted a brown bear named Wojtek, who served in the 22nd Artillery Supply Company during World War II.
He did, actually. Wojtek the bear. Take a look at him. Little buddy here. He was doing good work.
What'd he do?
He supplied shells for the artillery. They actually put
How'd
him
he
on.
do that?
He just would pick them up with his giant meaty paws, and he would just carry them around. Like that's what he did. I wish I could get a picture of him doing that. Maybe I can. Oh, here's Wojtek, actually right there.
That's insane, honestly. When was this? During World War II?
Yeah, this was during World War II. It was during the opening of the war in 1939 when Germany invaded Poland. But Wojtek was around, and he was slinging lead. He was actually moving shells. Uh,
Where'd they find him?
I forgot. Let me go look at his story really quickly. He was a Syrian brown bear adopted during World War.
Syrian?
Yeah, he's related to Assad, dude. Don't question.
Wait a minute, they have bears in Syria?
What?
What?
Apparently. Oh, that was cute. That's cute, actually. But
Do
oh
they
shoot,
have
they actually are.
bears
Yeah, look at that. They're mostly in
Syria?
Turkey, but yeah, they actually do exist.
It says no bears are found in Syria. It said while the Syrian bear used to roam the region, it's considered extinct. There's been sightings in the early 2000s in the anti-Lebanon mountain range that provided some hope, but there's no evidence that this Syrian brown bear is there. So that's wild. I had no idea there was ever bears in Syria. That's crazy.
Well, apparently they're endangered, but they still exist. Like the Syrian brown bear does exist somewhere. It's just they're in danger.
It says they're extinct on the one I read.
Here it's saying that they're endangered. So I'm generally assuming that they probably are, but let's see here. He was adopted during World War II by his soldiers of the 2nd Polish Corps, which Wojtek accompanied to Italy, serving with the 22nd Artillery Supply Company. And in 1944, during the Battle of Monte Cassino, which was a horrendous battle, by the way, on the Italian front. Most people don't know about it, but it was a really big one for that front. Wojtek imitated his human comrades carrying ammunition crates. He was promoted from private to corporal and became a celebrity with visiting Allied generals and statesmen. After the war, he mustered out of the Polish army and lived out the rest of his life in Scotland at the Edinburgh Zoo.
Oh wow.
Pretty cool, actually. He's a pretty cool bear. You can see him on the symbol for the artillery in Poland. He's still a big thing in Poland, but there he is in Scotland after the war.
That's crazy, honestly. Like, actually, I kind of like that banner of that bear walking that artillery shell down. It kind of looks pretty good.
Dude, that's baller, actually. Like having a bear carrying a shell for your unit emblem. Let me go see if I can find a better example of it. Yeah, here's another
That
one.
seems like it'd be psychologically damaging for the enemy. Like to think, not only are the humans like fighting against us, but also they've even recruited the bears to like get involved in this.
Dude, well, how would you like to be a commie, whose symbol for Mother Russia is the bear, and then you have a bear supplying artillery shells in a possible war that might be killing you? It's like, well, that didn't happen. They were fighting Italians and Nazis in Italy, but still, that'd be kind of funny to think about. But let's see. Oh yeah, here's a better Wojtek symbol. Honestly, man, that's pretty cool. I would honestly want that as a wall poster.
Yeah, I like that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty neat. But anyways, with that, I hope we addressed that rabbit hole well. Really cool story about the bear. And so with that, big thanks to you once again, and we're on to the next one.
And this one goes to Wan Tan Quadruple 8 once again, who puts in a 10. He said another animal story, not quite as fun, but you guys remember Russia strapping bombs on the dolphins and training them to swim onto the ships, and their project failed in LSA.
And yes, we did. Apparently, there was a beluga wandering around up there in the Scandinavian countries that was apparently supposed to be conducting recon and had a recon harness and everything. It ended up getting killed about a year and a half ago by someone. No one knows who, but we have heard about that before, and it's a good thing that it failed. That's kind of like them with the kamikaze dogs, where they'd strap bombs to the dogs and then tell them to go run under a German tank. Problem is, they trained them on Soviet tanks, so when they let the dogs loose, the dogs would run towards the Soviet tanks and blow up under them instead, wiping out the Soviet tankmen instead of the Nazi tankmen. So a little bit interesting with that one, but still, a big thanks to you for the support. I hope that does address that well. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to JamFan WP Dad, who puts in a 5. He said Andrew Jackson nearly killed his would-be assassin. The Secret Service had to pull him off the would-be assassin as he was beating him with a cane. Andrew Jackson was a freaking nut. Like that guy was like tough as nails. That guy was absolutely wild. So I'm not shocked by that at all. But Enforcer, what say you?
He was suffering from severe lead poisoning by the time he was president, if y'all didn't know, because he had two lead pretty much balls stuck inside of him. They couldn't get him out because he'd been shot a couple of times, and they just left the lead bullets in. They didn't know that lead was damaging to you neurologically at the time, so the guy was not doing well. He was clearly showing severe signs of lead poisoning by modern medical standards by the time he was president. But this guy was a nut, believed that he was supposed to be the rightful president or king of the United States, tried to kill Andrew Jackson, so he popped up out of a bush, out of a theater, went, oh, and like, click, one pistol misfired, click, the second one misfired. And so Andrew Jackson comes charging at him with his cane and chases him several blocks down the street, runs him down, makes him fall onto the ground, just starts beating the guy with a cane. Beat him so hard, I think he broke his cane and nearly beat the guy to death. Let me go see if I can pull up that story. Andrew Jackson failed assassination. Let's see here. Here we go. Here we go. Here's that Richard Lawrence guy right there. There he is.
Huh.
Yeah, they almost beat him to death. Like, let's see. There's Andrew Jackson right there, kind of walking around with a pimp stick. This guy tried to blast him. First one misfired. That one's already on the ground. This one misfired as well. Andrew Jackson would beat him to death, nearly. So kind of a cool story with that. But let's see here. Let's see. However, the time Jackson left the funeral, where Jackson would pass. Lawrence stepped out and fired his pistol at Jackson's back. It misfired. Lawrence quickly made another attempt with a second pistol, but that also misfired. It was later determined that the weapons that he had chosen were noted for being vulnerable to moisture, and the weather on that day was humid and damp. Lawrence's unsuccessful attempts were noticed by Jackson, who proceeded to beat Lawrence with a cane. The crowd, which included U.S. Representative Davy Crockett of Pioneer fame and also of Alamo fame, eventually intervened and wrestled Lawrence into submission. Lawrence was the first person to attempt to kill a sitting U.S. president. So a little bit interesting with that. But yeah, he actually did try, and he failed. But beyond that, I do thank you for the support. I hope that has addressed that well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Kyle Padell, who puts in a 5. They said, fun fact, Chris's mom has the fascination with LBJ's jumbos.
Oh, thank you for the support, Kyle Padell, and throwing in the old Chris's mom jokes. It's a classic around here. But a big thanks to you once again. And with that, we're on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Neo, who puts in a 2. And thank you, Neo, as well, for that support. We also had a 2 from Pedal to the Metal 65, who said LSA. And I do agree, LSA to you. And we appreciate that very much. We also have a 2 from Plazoth, who did not leave a comment. And we have a 2 from LSA Sergeant Figment that said, hit the like button. That's in order.
Hey, hit the like button, folks. That is in order. And a big thanks to all of y'all once again for support and helping this channel to keep rolling. And with that, folks, we've made it on into our live chat segment. We're going to be getting the Morse code decoders of the stream and as many live chats as we can before we round the stream out. So, Matthew, what do we got?
All right, so jumping into our Morse code decoders of the night, we had Paul Schultz, Kevin J, Mason Miami, Joni Dog, Norm Pritchett, Arabelle Garbo, and her royal fluffiness. They said the Morse code for today says Iran is trying to take the easy way out, it seems, and why not help them out? LLTLOSA.
And ding, 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 ding. Shh. And that is the sound of money. Y'all got that dead on the nail. That was the Morse code message of the night. And I got to congratulate y'all for getting that correct time and time again. The Lee Spring Army Civil Corps never misses a Morse code message. And we are absolutely impressed to see that y'all got it right once again. A big round of applause for all of y'all. And so with that, we are now on into the question segment, the live chat question segment of the stream, which is the last part of the show. Also, I got to say really quickly, I have to thank everyone. I haven't thanked anyone tonight so far for watching. We actually had 18.7 thousand live viewers here tonight at the peak, and 172,000 people have watched the stream so far. And I got to thank y'all so much for enjoying it. I hope y'all have enjoyed it incredibly. And if y'all would like to, please subscribe. We are very, very close to 474,000 subscribers. So we are about to be just a shy bit away from 25,000 subscribers short of 500,000 or a 500,000. So can't wait for that. That's going to be really exciting when we eventually hit that. And so please, folks, do subscribe. You're going to get us closer to it with each and every passing day. And so with that, Matthew, what do we got for some live chats?
All right, so jumping into our first live chat, this one goes to Aussie Matty, who said, what are your thoughts on Ukraine's new 50 caliber anti-drone systems that they've unveiled?
I think that they're a good step forward, and I think that they're going to do quite well, at least in my opinion, because it's removing the gunners from the system and it's making an AI computer guided air defense system with a 50 cal, kind of like a normal technical, just without the crew and without the lack of efficiency. 1 second. Bless me, damn. But with that, I hope that does answer that well, and thank you for asking. Great question. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one goes to Sean, who said, how many troops will be needed to send to defang the Houthi forces in Yemen?
I would say that that's a good question. That's a good question. Let me reread it. Let's see. How many troops will be needed to send to defang the Houthis? Oh, you read that as defang. I thought you were reading some sort of like a Chinese word. I was like, I don't know.
I said defang.
I thought you said defang. Like, I was like, defang. I was like, I don't know what defang is. But beyond that, apparently I misheard. But to defang the Houthis, I'd say that only about a couple of MEUs would be needed. And everyone's going to be like, oh my God, he wants to send the Marines. This is their job, folks. It's an amphibious operation for the large part. This is what they do. It wouldn't make sense to send in the Army. The Marines are specialized for this kind of a thing. So I'd say send in a couple of MEUs, so a couple of brigades of Marines to help out the Saudi-Yemeni coalition, and that ought to do the trick, at least in my opinion. But with that, I hope that does address that well, at least in my opinion. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And we have a question here from Live Animal, who said, why did they not take the expensive ship to Yemen instead of just blowing it up and sinking it out there in the Red Sea?
Generally because they're trying to send a message more so than actually try and get anything for value or money. That's generally what I would understand. So they're trying to send a message that beware, your life and vessels are on the line if you pass through this area. I think that's more so what they're going for at this point. So I hope that does answer that well. Great question, by the way. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And this one goes to Steve Urkel, who said, please look up the King Faisal Naval Base, the location where Houthis commandeer and sunk the 2 commercial vessels within radar range of Saudi Arabia Navy assets. Why didn't the Saudi Arabians help?
Let's see. Let's go look at that. The King Faisal. King Faisal is also a very important figure in Saudi Arabia. Y'all ever seen King Faisal? Here's King Faisal.
Is that him?
That's him. I don't know why he's got such a disdainful scorn on his face in this picture, but this is actually the guy who ended up working with T.E. Lawrence, or Lawrence of Arabia, during World War I. He's actually that guy. So a little bit interesting with that. At least, hold up. Yeah, Yeah, he would be the guy. Yeah, he would have been the guy, I believe. I think. Oh, he was actually assassinated by shooting. Huh, I didn't know that. Hold up. I want to make sure that I'm correct with this. This video, he met with British officials. Yeah, actually, he... No, you actually wasn't the guy. There's another Faisal then, I believe. I don't know. But anyways, with that, beyond that though, I'm getting sidetracked with the whole King Faisal thing himself. We need to go pull up the King Faisal base. The King Faisal naval base. Well, I mean, that's not exactly within the range that they could help out. Like, going over here really quickly. This looks like it's somewhere around here. Let me see if I can find it really quick. Let's see here. Where in the world is it? Okay, so let me look at this again. So it's right there on the bump. So it's right here. It's actually in Jeddah. That would make sense. So it's not incredibly close because by the way a ship would travel, that is about 500 miles away from the incident. And if we were to say that those vessels had an air defense range of about 100 miles, they are well away from being able to help. So that would generally be my answer, is that they probably haven't deployed their ships into the area. They should, but the U.S. Navy should also deploy our ships in the area because this is an issue of ours and our concern because it's affecting our shipping. Whether the Saudis want to do anything or not, you generally don't call your neighbor over and bitch to them about not putting out your own house fire. Is generally the way I look at it. And whether the Saudis want to do anything or not doesn't really matter. This is really more so affecting our shipping, and that's what matters to me the most, is that we deal with something that's a part of our problem. And so with that, I hope that does address that the best I can. I do thank you for the support and asking a great question. And with that, we're on to the next one.
Okay, so our next one goes to Rick O, who said, how will the U.S. and Israel respond to the latest Houthi attacks? Will it be a multinational action, or what is it going to look like?
I would hope that it's a multinational coalition, but I'll be entirely honest, I don't really have a lot of faith in the competency of the Department of State or the Office of the President to cook up a plan like that. I mean, I'm not trying to like diss on people as far as a political thing. It's just that a lot of these people seem to be inexperienced. I don't know if they would come up with something like that or be able to succeed in actually formulating something like that and getting everyone on the same page. So that's what I would think should be done as a multinational coalition, like I've spoken about in the stream prior. But I don't know if they'd ever do that, or if they think they'd have the political support to be able to do something like that either. So I generally have to say what would really happen is we're probably just going to end up bombing them for like a fourth time or a third time and hope that that works again. That's probably what would happen, at least in my opinion. But hopefully we'll see that what I said should happen will happen, because that's probably the best case result that we can get given the situation we have at the moment. And so with that, we are on to the next one.
And we also have a question from, let's see here, from JC, who said, do you think they may be trying to create a layer of junk in the bottom of the sea to possibly try to hide submarines?
Not really, because if submarines are ever that close to the bottom, they're in perilous danger, because if they come up on a rocky shoal that has not been mapped, that submarine is going. Like, everyone on board's dead at that point, and there's probably not going to be a chance of recovery for most of them. So highly likely that that's not the case. But I hope that answers the question well. And with that, we are on to the next one.
And our next one here goes to Run and Gunny, who said, do you think America will respond to the naval attacks in the Middle East? That's actually a question just like the one we just got a minute ago, actually, from Rick. But thank you very much, Run and Gunny, for that support. We also had a question from Aussie Maddie once again, who said, will the new Shark light aircraft drone blocking units work, or are they too weak?
I would have to declare ignorance on that specific system. I do not know a great deal about it, at least at the moment. So, unfortunately, I won't be able to answer that question too well because of a lack of knowledge. But with that, we are on to the next one.
And this appears to be our last question of the night, because it's the only one we have left in the spreadsheet.
Oh. And so with that, folks, gee, folks, I didn't expect this to happen this early. We are on to the final question of the night. And so, who is like the last person to throw in the lucky last question of the night?
And this one goes to Live Animal, who said, why did Iran choose ceasefire, and instead of buying time, they're doing this in the Red Sea?
Well, I don't know. Actually, I would have to generally say it's probably because they're stupid. I don't really see a lot of wise decisions coming out of the Iranian government, at least recently, and it's really degraded my trust and confidence that a whole bunch of religious fanatics can actually run a government. And generally, the fact is that no kind of fanatic, whether they're religious, non-religious, communist, fascist, they can't run governments well. If you have any kind of a radical government that just like clings to an ideology like a fiend, they're not going to run a government well because they're more focused on their ideology than they are governing or administering. So that would generally be my best answer. Kind of just roasting them. They just suck at running a country. It's the best answer I can give. But with that, I hope that does address it the best I can. And we have reached the end of tonight's stream, folks. I got to thank you all so much once again for watching. It's been an honor and a pleasure to be able to run the stream for all of y'all. We had 18.7 thousand people at the peak tonight, and 174,000 people have watched this stream before it ended. We're entirely honored and appreciative of all of y'all watching the stream tonight. If y'all have enjoyed, please make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and support us on Patreon. Link in the description below. But with that, we will see you all tomorrow at 10 p.m. Eastern Time to cover the next 24 hours of news from around the world. And if we have a short war video, Matthew will be the one making it. And so with that, good night, good luck, take care, stay safe, Slava Ukraini, long live the Leaf Spring Army, and long live the Republic.
And with that, folks, thank you all for joining us once again tonight. And of course, be sure to join me tomorrow on the short war video if there is enough news to make midday. And also on the stream again tomorrow night at 10 p.m. Eastern. And we'll see you all then. And thank you to all 174,000 people that joined us by the end of the stream tonight. And even about the 9,000 people that stayed during all of our fun facts tonight during the question segment as well. And we appreciate every single one of you. And we look forward to seeing you all tomorrow. And with that, Slava Ukraine, Hiram Slava, get some rest and good night.
Future